Hello and welcome to the 111th episode of Rewind Reviews. This is our 100th official review, not counting the Harry Potter stuff or the weird Honey, I Shrunk the Kids Insanity pilot series that we did. We're here. We're doing it. We're doing Revenge of the Sith. For those unfamiliar, although it would be weird to be jumping in on the 100th episode of a podcast that's a third movie in a trilogy. But if you're joining us just now to podcast where we review movies from our youth, we're doing a Star Wars trilogy. We're on the third of that trilogy. We're on Revenge of the Sith. I figure we just leap right in because I feel like there's tons to say about this movie, but I'm also like, the movie's super confused, and I feel like my thoughts on it are muddled also. It's really hard to pin down why it's not working, this film, I think. So we'll get into it, but we'll start as we usually do with memories. Do you have any memories of seeing this for the first time?
You know what? I was just thinking about that as you did the intro, and I'll be honest with you, Dan. I'm not 100% sure I saw this at the cinema.
Oh, interesting. So do you think the first time you saw it was just DVD or video later on?
DVDing it up, yeah. I just get the feeling of just if memory serves. I might be wrong there, but I was a bit burnt by Attack of the Clones and for whatever reason didn't end up seeing this at the cinema. So I might be wrong.
I had the opposite experience with this one. I saw Attack of the Clones probably first weekend, but I wasn't midnight screening or the first show or anything. I saw it when I could see it. I was a bit younger though, I suppose. I had a little less free agency because I would have been, I think we worked out I was 12 with the first one, so I would have been 15-ish with the second one, and this was another 3 years later, I think. So I would have been 17, 18. So I was in college. And I had a lecture the Friday morning this was due out. But the cinema in Manchester had a 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. showing that if I watched and then assuming the movie wasn't crazy long, I could get the bus from Manchester back into Stockport and make my lecture having seen the movie before the day even began. But the problem was there were no buses from where I lived into Stockport to even get me then to Manchester at that kind of time in the morning. So I had to wake up at 3 in the morning or 2:30 in the morning, something like that. And I did a nearly 2-hour walk it was an hour and 45 minutes to walk into Stockport, where I could then get a bus into Manchester, where I then made my 6 a.m. screening, which was full of students doing what I was doing or people in suits who are clearly going to their day jobs afterwards. But it was one of the first showings in the UK, to the point where as I was coming out, I was coming down the escalators, there was a guy with local news with a microphone getting quotes for their morning thing from the first people, the fans that saw it in the first morning show. And I distinctly remember what I said, because he was like, "Is it any good?" And I just said, "I guess it's better than the last two, but it's still nothing on the originals." And then I walked away because I had to get to a lecture. So I have really specific memories of seeing this at the time.
And do you stand by that review, Dan?
Oh, that's complicated. I'm not as convinced it's better than Phantom Menace now. It's definitely better than Attack of the Clones, because Attack of the Clones, as we've established, is pretty much the worst Star Wars movie. I don't think I'll ever see a Star Wars movie as bad as that in my life. And I know Hollywood right now is going, challenge accepted, and commissioning some absolute horseshit. But Attack of the Clones is so impossibly bad. That is such an obscene standard for lack of quality that I really don't know how we ever reach that low again. But, maybe I'll be proven wrong and I'll be very sad about it when that happens. But right now, I just can't envision a movie as bad as that. Phantom Menace, on this reviewing, I think it's not that I don't think it's that I think Revenge of the Sith has massively changed in my estimation. I still think it's a very flawed film with some good elements to it. That my opinion of Revenge of the Sith has pretty much stayed static, I think. What's changed, I think, is I have a higher opinion of Phantom Menace than I did back then.
I think for me, the Revenge of the Sith contains by far the best scenes, the best stuff in the prequel trilogy.
Yeah.
By a long way. That last hour is probably the best. There's a few dodgy moments in that last hour for sure. But, like, Revenge of the Sith absolutely contains the prequel's highlights, I think. And it's the most, like, genuinely, like, close to captivated I've been watching this rewatch. Mm-hmm. But as a complete functioning movie, I feel like The Phantom Menace works better as a movie experience, because this movie contains some real fucking lows. Some of the I more even more than Attack of the Clones, I just laughed out loud at some of the fucking absurd shit in this movie.
Yeah, like shit dialogue or like weirdness.
Yeah, just awful dialogue. I have the higher ground. Fucking hell!
Yeah.
Oh
we'll
god, he's literally
because Mythbusters
literally on the
tried to prove it. The worst culprit for dialogue, and I know we're back on George Lucas's dialogue, and as it's been a big topic for these 3 episodes, but his dialogue is genuinely dreadful beyond belief. But you're so beautiful. It's only because I'm so in love. No, it's because I'm so in love with you. So love has blinded you? Well, that's not exactly what I meant. It's probably true. What is that? That's barely English. That is fucking word salad with the word love. So what are you talking about?
It's mad. It's mad.
Can I read you something, Chris, very quickly before you move us on, because it is literally directly with the point you just made. Because what's really interesting is what you said there about how there are things and scenes in this movie you enjoyed, but the whole doesn't really come together. This is a sentence from my notes. So I wrote this 3 hours ago. Overall, I think the movie works moment to moment in a micro sense, but in a macro sense, it doesn't work as a whole. So we had a very similar experience watching this. I've written almost the exact same sentiment in different words into my notes.
And it benefits from the weight of knowledge.
Yep.
The weight of the way you feel about the Vader suit and the way you feel about, Tatooine, and really importantly, fucking hell, does this film benefit from the work they've done since with Order 66? Mm-hmm. Like, because you watch it in the movie, and it just fucking comes out of nowhere with no context. I mean, all the Jedi start to die, obviously.
We're going to break that now, because, yes, you're absolutely right. Order 66 is badass through additions, not from this movie, for sure.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, that's what makes it a more pleasurable viewing experience. And like we were watching it, and there are just these random scenes, and Jess just goes, God, it really makes you realise just, how many Jedi they killed. And I'm like, yeah, but we're seeing Jedi we've never met before on planets we've not been to get killed, and it just doesn't have the weight if you take it in isolation. I don't think, because it's like, well, who the fuck are these people? And don't get me wrong, they've done a phenomenal job.
Are you not a big fan of Master Plo Koon?
Well, this is what I'm saying. They've done a brilliant job adding weight to that after.
Yeah.
What a fantastic idea to go, okay, well, who were those Jedis? Let's add the context around that. Let's show that some people struggled with it. Let's do all these things. Mm-hmm. And the film benefits from that. But in isolation, as a complete movie, I don't think it, whilst it is the most enjoyable to watch, I don't think it is the best constructed movie of the 3.
Yeah, I think Phantom Menace is, for its flaws, a more complete film as a film. And that's saying something, because it doesn't even have a fucking protagonist than this one. Whereas this movie does sort of have a protagonist, but it lets itself down with like lots of really poor... It's like good ideas with really poor execution, or muddled execution because the ideas are overlapping. That's a really common theme in this movie, actually, where it's like there are 2 ideas, but they're kind of fighting each other. So my biggest complaint is around Anakin's arc. So spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about Anakin a lot over the next, hour or 2 or whatever this podcast ends up being, because it's like 2 scripts got smushed together. One where Anakin was a helpless victim because he just wanted Padme to survive, and he did horrible things he didn't agree with. But it didn't matter, because to him, he was like, it's my attachment to Padme, I'm doing this for Padme. You know, there's the scene when he first knocks Mace Windu out the window, and he's like, what have I done? And he's like, well, do you want Padme to live? And he's like, I'll do what you say. And it's like, it feels very much like a hostage situation, almost. Like, Anakin is acting because of wanting to save Padme. But then there's, like, all this, like, stuff about his ideology that's separate to that, where it's like, you know, oh, the Jedi they're too bold. They should be protecting the Republic. You know, they shouldn't be going after Palpatine, which is all muddled in with that stuff. And it comes up loads of times, but it's like it never comes up at the same time as the Padme stuff, because those two things don't really go together, in my opinion. Because is he ideologically following Palpatine, or is he sort of there because of Padme? And for those of you who would say, oh, it's both, I don't buy that. It doesn't really track for me, because, well, one, for just a screenwriting perspective, it's just cleaner if it's one, for a start. But two, there's such different reasons to be doing what he's doing, and it changes the motivations for every single scene. Like, so if he's doing it for Padme, it makes sense that he would have saved Mace Windu in that moment, because Mace Windu was trying to kill Palpatine. But if he's doing it for Padme, it doesn't make sense he would murder children. Whereas if it's ideological, you could believe him being so far gone he'd kill children. Do you know what I mean? Has he let darkness into his heart, or is he just so desperate to save his love, like his true love, whatever? It's scene to scene, it works because it's one or the other. But when you look at the whole movie, it doesn't track across the film. That's the issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think what would have helped there, what I needed, Dan, between him basically telling on Palpatine,
yep,
and going to Mace Windu and saying, this is the situation with Palpatine, and calling Palpatine out and rallying against him, between that and him joining him, I needed more than him just looking out on a balcony. I needed more to justify that switch, I think.
Yeah, what? Because
you could argue, yes, but the switch happens when he's in there with Mace Windu. But
what's interesting about that is I actually fucking love that balcony scene. Right? I genuinely think that balcony scene in isolation, outside of this movie, is brilliant. He sat in the balcony, she's on hers. They're both looking out at the city. They know each other always out there. It's like they're communicating without communicating. He can hear echoes of the dreams he's had of her. It's actually a really well done scene for one of these movies, where you can tell how haunted he is by that thought of losing her, right? And I'm actually like, oh, that's really cool, but it's not enough to justify the scene that then follows it. That's the problem. Is like, again, in isolation, does that work? Yeah, that's a really clever scene. Does it work with the rest of the movie? No. For example, another great example of this, and it's all related to Anakin's arc, is the scene when when he goes to the space opera, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. They're at the space opera, and Palpatine's all like, have you heard the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, or whatever he calls him? And he tells him the story, and he's like, the dark side is the root to many skills some consider unnatural. And Anakin's like, is it possible to learn these? And he's basically winking at him as he goes, not from a Jedi. He's so clearly telling him who he is, what his allegiances are. And as a scene, it's menacing as fuck. I love it. Ian McDermott doing Palpatine is amazing in it. And I'm like, great, that's an amazing scene. But like 20 minutes later, he tells Anakin, because he's like, Jesus, this kid still isn't getting it. He's like, look, I'm a Sith. And Anakin's like, you're a Sith? And I'm like, wait, the previous scene was so subtle and menacing, but apparently it was too subtle for you big thicko. It doesn't work together. Again, we've got two scenes that are fine in different movies. If the movie really had been that Anakin had no idea and he never hinted at it, and that was like a surprise reveal, Anakin's response makes perfect sense, and that works as a scene. But you can't put that scene in the same movie as not from a Jedi, wink wink. Might as well have been flashing a neon sign like, I'm a Sith, I'm a Sith. And the whole movie is plagued with this problem of scenes that work on their own but don't work in the rest of the movie. It's fucking insane. Sorry. Anakin's arc in this movie pissed me off. Can you tell?
No, it's absolutely fair because they just don't do the work to justify it, and I genuinely think it almost doesn't need. It just needs everything needs tightening. Like everything just needs tightening up, and the script just needs work. Like Attack of the Clones, we talked about how that was so flawed throughout that you don't even know how you'd go about making that a better movie other than tearing it up and starting again. With this, the pieces are there.
Yeah.
We have Obi-Wan have a decent relationship with a clone warrior. With the clone soldier, and then we don't, that moment where they turn on him. It's almost difficult. I don't even really know how Obi-Wan worked out that the clones had turned on him because Obi-Wan doesn't see who fired that. He's out, and again, it's taking away that moment of one of the clones turning to a Jedi and the Jedi going, wait, what are you doing? What's going on here? And maybe them saying it's Order 66 and that moment dropping, or them putting together, okay, well, was Palpatine involved in all of this? It just isn't there.
You've hit on actually another great example of the movie trying to do two things that don't work together, because I think with the clones, there's two versions of the script, and depending on which scene you're looking at, it's from one version or the other. One version of the script, the idea is just simply, they are troopers, soulless clones that will just obey orders. Order 66, you kill the Jedi, cool. I'm a soulless being that, when I was made as a clone, all my own personal thoughts and feelings were removed from the situation. I am just going to fire. Because that is what I do. I am a soldier. I listen to my commander. Simple, right? Or you do the thing where it's, I found your lightsaber, Obi-Wan. Thanks, Cody. Which is lovely, and it's nice to know he, as General Obi-Wan as he is, he's connected to his troops. But then, if you're going to do that, when they start shooting, maybe have. Cody, no, have him react to that. Do something with that. Why bother establishing he's pally with the clones if we're not going to then explore that? So they either need to be the mindless drone, just human sacks of meat bred to fight, or they have thoughts and feelings of their own, in which case that's a really sad situation. Now, again, for all of you already frantically typing in the comment section, I know the Clone Wars TV series completely fixes this. It does. It does a brilliant job with it. In the series, they actually have these chips in their brains. So when Order 66 is executed, they physically cannot help it. And it is tragic and brutal. And as the whole series went on, they explored so much the struggles of these clones, both for their own identities, but also being people in a war that they didn't always necessarily agree with. They did so much great stuff with clones in the series and the indoctrination of them and how it worked. Really, really top-tier storytelling. That doesn't excuse this movie. And what this movie does is a confused mess, where it's again, there were two separate ideas that do not go together, and they tried to do a little bit of both, and it ended up not working. And it's a real shame, because Order 66 is, as I said at the beginning, a really fucking cool idea. And it has been made that way now with supplemental media. Fallen Order, the game, does an amazing Order 66 sequence. We had a great 66 sequence in Mandalorian. The Clone Wars obviously handled it in its final episode. It's come up a bunch of times, and it's been great every time I think Rebels did a version of it too. Because obviously, as we've gone across the series and we've met different Jedi who have lived past it, we've gotten flashbacks to how they got out of it, And I also think that showing lots of Jedi did actually scrape by also makes it work better, because if you just go by the lay of the land of the movies, if you're just the movie guy and you never look any supplemental material, then you have to somehow believe that they managed to get all of them but two. Which again, is absurd.
What this movie
implies.
Is what this movie is telling us. Yeah.
Well, it's telling us that in one scene, but then in another scene, Obi-Wan says that thing about I've changed the thing to warn people not to come to the temple, so maybe we'll save a couple. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, because in the sequel trilogy, or not the sequel trilogy, the sequel to this trilogy, the original trilogy, they're the last ones. No one else survived, and we know that's not true. And supplemental material is added to that. But just if you're going by the lay of the land, if the Bible is just these 6 or 9 movies, that's not the case. And I prefer to know there are other Jedis out there, because it is absurd to think, a religion that far spread with that many members, or whatever you want to call the Jedis, religion knights, whatever you want to call, whatever the comparison is. It's the idea that they all got away, every single one but 2 got squashed is ridiculous. It's too big a galaxy for that to have worked. You could absolutely convince me he got most, but you can't convince me he got all. I refuse. So yeah, I'm glad they've done that. But again, within the movie, that's not what's there. Very confusing. This movie, man. What are they doing? Just what are they doing, Chris?
Well, yeah, exactly. For sure. And yeah, I think that's the big thing for me about Order 66. It's by far the thing that benefits from the supplementary media the most. And again, just that, like you say, the kids sequence is so horrible because they've just not done enough to justify Anakin's logic for that and Anakin's turn for that. And I think just some more scenes or showing, maybe more scenes of Palpatine manipulating Anakin early on. Because let's talk about this 2 halves thing. Because what, other than sort of Anakin or Palpatine scenes, like the first half of the movie, we're dealing with we've got a random, like, you could do this movie and it's just Palpatine's the villain throughout, but we've got General Grievous, is it, for the first half of the movie, and then they're dispatched like probably around the midway point. We've got scenes like the ridiculous elevator stuff, which feels quite Star Wars in places, but also feels overly cartoonish in other places. R2-D2 revealing skills we never knew he had that would have been handy in other movies. Like, I just feel like the first half of this movie is like, huh? And it's just very, very separate to what comes later. Because it feels like what comes later is actually what he wanted to talk about and do. And that's how I think you fix this movie. You go, okay, well, in that case, let's not deal with General Grievous in the first half. Let's not deal with politics. Let's not have Palpatine captured, because we don't see there's a look between Count Dooku, but I'm not even sure, Dan, there's a look between Count Dooku when he's like, kill him, and Count Dooku looks at him as if to be like, what the fuck, dude? And he says, kill him now. And you could interpret that as Count Dooku knows the truth, and therefore the kill him now is actually for him to be killed before Count Dooku has a chance to say he's the real bad guy. But I don't know for sure, Dan, whether Count Dooku does actually know that. I don't know for sure whether he got fucking genuinely captured or that was all part of his plan and manipulation. So why don't you just make the first half of the movie relevant to the second half? And maybe I've missed something there and it is obvious, but I just feel like it's meandering right up top. And if you just take away some of that meandering, add more scenes of Palpatine manipulating Anakin, add more scenes that show Anakin doesn't quite trust the Jedi ideals anyway. Have a scene where Obi-Wan wakes up and goes, wait, hold on a second, Anakin, did you just kill Count Dooku? Like, do you know what I mean? That's a big moment. Like, he doesn't need to kill him. It's not the Jedi way, but he kills him. But all that moment is doing is going, oh, look, he's a bit of a dodgy fella, old Anakin. Yeah. There's no reaction to that. There's no discourse around.
There's no consequence to that choice at all.
None.
No.
Yeah.
The movie doesn't challenge Anakin's choice that in any way, shape, or form.
No, exactly. And it's just, like I say, it's just lazy. It's just utter lazy. Oh, well, this shows he's a bad guy because he's willing to kill even at the beginning of the movie. Do you agree that it's a movie of 2 halves?
Yes and no. I like the opening sequence on the whole, but I wouldn't have structured it the way they did opening with that. If someone handed me this script and said, like, you need to rework this, the first thing I'm removing is Padme's childbirth, death, premonition stuff. Just gone. Just gone altogether, right? Because I just think it muddles things in a way that is not satisfying. I would have it that the plot of the movie is that we're coming to the end of the war. They're narrowing down where Dooku is, and Palpatine is doing a lot of like manipulating of Anakin. And the plot of the movie is they've gone to rescue Palpatine, and the manipulations happen on that mission. Like, they get Palpatine midway through the movie or something like that, and then they're trying to get him to safety, and that's when a lot of the manipulations start to happen. But Anakin, the whole way through it, is concerned about the Jedi, is worried that they're overstepping. You know, the Jedi are getting suspicious of Palpatine, and Palpatine is doing what he does in this movie, which is use that to his advantage. You know, you do that movie. Do the Anakin goes ideologically along with Palpatine, because then by the end of the movie you get away with justifying it. You just remove Grievous altogether. Why is Dooku murdered and then essentially replaced with a different figurehead guy? Like, have Anakin killing Dooku be a end of the second act low point, the start of his turn to the dark side. Instead of doing that right at the opening of the movie and then expecting me to just be on a joy, fun adventure with lifts. You know, like, what a waste of the moment of Anakin killing Dooku, you know, and it's literally never referenced again in the movie. Like, it's insane. It's like, it's so strange. Like, you do not need Grievous, at all. There's a big war happening across the galaxy. Palpatine has been kidnapped. The mission is save Palpatine, but in amongst that, and in all the stuff with them having to hang out with Palpatine to rescue him, Obi-Wan and Anakin get drawn into his bullshit, and he turns Anakin. And it climaxes with him convincing Anakin to kill Dooku in front of Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is not unconscious for that moment, so that then Obi-Wan can challenge him on that choice. That's the movie. That should be the movie. Then you can do Order 66, Palpatine taking over the Senate and saying the Jedi have turned on me. I want the power to do Order 66 or whatever, just doing it anyway, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can do all of that stuff after that, and then you can have, you know, Obi-Wan and Anakin fight over the situation because Obi-Wan tracks him down. You know, you can do, you are my brother, you can do all of that stuff. That's all fine. But just how we got there is just, as you said, meandering. And look, the purpose of this podcast isn't to repitch a movie. Although I did once play with the idea of... so I remember years ago I said to Nadia we should do a podcast where we both get to where we do, it's like Rewind Reviews, where each week we do a different movie that the one is selected, but it was too much work in the end. But the idea was we would take a movie we didn't like how it played out and repitch it to the other. So like one week you'd come in and be like, right, I'm repitching the Matrix sequels, and then I'd come in the next week and be like, oh, I'm repitching the Star Wars sequels or whatever the prequels are, you know, and that's how we would do it. But it was too much work, because I remember we did the pitch for the Steven Universe movie thing, and that was so much work. It was really fun, and the podcast turned out great, but it was so much work. We'd never be able to make that work in a long term thing. I'd have to quit my day job to be able to do that, basically.
It's also funny because especially for the work it was, bearing in mind that pitching the Steven Universe movies went out as episodes of our Steven Universe podcast. And I didn't particularly get a lot of traction or interaction or feedback from people. And it's like, that was us doing the work and pitching something we were already talking about. Pitching.
Yeah, I remember it getting okay traction, but yeah, I could be misremembering that. I could really be misremembering that. I remember the work that went into it being a lot.
So could I. I could be misremembering as well, for sure.
But my point really, with pitching a different version of the movie is that there are ways to make this movie work by making changes. Because also, there is another version of the movie that I'm also fine with, where it is just Anakin being emotionally manipulated over the Padme stuff, and we're not really doing the politics stuff. In terms of, like, he's not ideologically on his side. He's got no choice. And that's actually, that's its own version of tragic, but I really don't think both work. I don't think trying to do both works at all. I think they each detract from the other. And it really does just feel like remnants of two scripts smooshed together. And it's a real shame, because I think his arc this is the first movie of this trilogy that actually has a protagonist, I would argue, in Anakin. And Obi-Wan lays it out right at the beginning. I actually kind of like that. That's one of the things I do like about the opening sequence, is Anakin gets to be the hero. Like, Anakin, full Jedi, saves the day. Obi-Wan literally carried unconscious on his back, crash lands the ship, saves the Emperor, takes out the bad guy, All that stuff's great. And then Obi-Wan actually says, no, go have your day in the sun with the politicians. I'm going to go do admin or whatever they got us Jedi doing in this very boring version of the Star Wars past. I'm going to go do that. And you have your day in the sun as the hero. But I like that because it kind of makes it's the movie almost putting a stamp on Anakin's arc from hero to villain in this movie. That's what we're following. And I do think mostly the movie commits to that. Yeah, and I think you're yearning earlier. You mentioned as well more scenes of Anakin and Palpatine manipulation. I don't think we need more scenes. I just think we need more focused scenes. We have plenty of those in this movie. They just need to be refocused because they're very muddled. As I mentioned earlier, it's like that scene where Palpatine makes it very obvious he's a Sith, but then they do another scene 10 minutes later where he outright says it, and Anakin acts like he's never conceived of such an idea. So like it's they just need refocusing more than I don't think we need more screen time for them, if I'm being honest. To move us on, one of the big criticisms this movie gets is how long and how the lightsaber battle with Obi-Wan goes on for. Anakin and Obi-Wan, and there's just this needless, two people waving blue sticks at each other in increasingly ridiculous locales and increasingly dangerous lava-based situations. I do agree that the fight isn't working, but I will actually disagree with that it's too long. It's actually in the movie, from the moment they start swinging blades at each other to the I have the high ground, it's 12 minutes, which is not very long at all, in my opinion. I think the problem, this is one of those weird situations where I think people are right that there is something not working there, but they've kind of misdiagnosed the cause. Because that 12 minutes, it's also cutting to other stuff as well. So that's not 12 straight minutes of those two whacking each other with blue lightsabers. It's probably actually about 8 minutes of that 12, maybe even 6 or 7 of that 12. The problem is that it starts with them getting all their grievances aired. I hate you because you've turned Padme against me. Well, I'm here to kill you because you've turned into a Sith Lord. Okay, and then they have a fight. And there's nothing happening for those two characters during that fight. Think back to the big climactic lightsaber fights of the original trilogy. The first one, Obi-Wan is using that as a teachable moment for Luke. He's giving himself up to make himself more powerful with the trick he's learned. He knows he can guide Luke better as a Force ghost, and that it will ultimately lead to Darth Vader's demise, and it teaches Luke a very valuable lesson. He's also reconfronting, Anakin after all these years. So there's a lot going on emotionally in that scene. It's not just I'm here to... Obi-Wan doesn't even go to that space station to fight Vader. He just gets that opportunity. Second movie, we've got Vader and Luke, and it's the emotional crux of that becomes the reveal of Luke's lineage. The emotional crux of the third one is it's a battle for Luke's soul. In a lot of ways. Luke is... The Emperor is trying to turn Luke to the dark side. So there's an emotional crux to all of those fights. The emotions are already gotten out when this fight starts. There's nothing... We've reached the edge of the cliff. Anakin's a Sith now, and Obi-Wan's there to kill him. So they're just there to have a fight. There's no longer any turmoil to that. There's no longer any emotional tension to that, or weight to that whatsoever, other than these people used to be close, and now they're having to fight. But it's not... In the context of this specific movie, the arcs are both complete before they start wielding the lightsabers. So it's just this inevitable and admittedly very well choreographed fight scene that doesn't have any real emotional tension to it, in my opinion. And it doesn't even ever stop to have them talk about that stuff as they're going. It starts with that, and then it has a little chat right at the end, right before everyone leaves Anakin in the dirt. It's just... It feels very soulless as it goes. Whereas you look at like his fight with Vader, he's like hiding and he's trying to be manipulated. The Palpatine's in the background going like, let your anger fill you, be hatred. Like there are stakes emotionally to that fight from Return of the Jedi. So for me, I think the fight doesn't work, but I think for that reason, This is the longest question I've ever asked in my entire life because I ended up giving my whole spiel. But sorry, Chris, when you watched it this time, did you agree with the criticism people often give that it's too long, or did you think it was the right length, or do you think it worked, or do you think that is enough emotionally for a fight scene to function? How did you stand on the fight basically?
I think the thing is, when there's dialogue as strong as "I hate you," "You were like a brother to me," "I loved you," it's hard to feel any criticism. No,
You were the chosen one.
I didn't feel it was too long because it's cutting, but I didn't know that was a criticism, so I wasn't necessarily looking out for it, to be fair. But I thought that for me, almost when they get into it, absolutely fine. Like, although there's a lot of, for me, the ridiculousness comes from. It felt like, because that was, I don't know if you've got more triv on this, but like I've heard people talk about how, long before the prequels,
mm-hmm.
after Star Wars, Lucas would talk about, or there'd be all these rumors about Darth Vader was partly formed on a volcano planet. And there's parts of this, for me, the most laborious parts of the fight are actually when it's just kicking off and we're just making excuses for lava to explode everywhere. Mm-hmm. And Anakin's landing on a droid, which in some ways is cool, but considering Obi-Wan has just landed on a piece of ship and now Anakin has found a piece of ship right by him and they're just sort of going along on this lake of lava.
I think worse than that is when they knock the control panel and then like stuff starts moving outside. Like whatever this like factory on a molten planet is, they like set it off in their fight. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. And that's reminded me, this isn't connected to this, but it's reminded me of another ridiculous moment, which is when in the opening battle where the windows all smash and some of the people fall out, but just like everyone else is just susceptible to space. Like, that's okay. Like, they'd be killed instantly. Like, the amount of time that they're just exposed to space.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out because I was like, are they in lower atmosphere? Like, what's the explanation here? Because they are hovering over a planet. Is it that the atmosphere's thin? Because obviously we did this in the Guardians movies where people were sucked out into space and could withstand 10, 20 seconds before somebody got a helmet on them or whatever. It was just depicted in a clearer way what was happening. Like, they're still in the ship. They're just holding on and the air is whooshing past them. Was there just enough air in the ship to give them, until it's sealed? I agree with you. It's not clear and it doesn't really work. I mean, obviously Grievous is like mostly machine, although he's coughing, so he has a respiratory system. So that he needs to breathe? No? How is he? Like, if he's coughing, he has a respiratory system. So he doesn't need air, but he has a respiratory system.
It would appear that way.
Fine. Okay, sure. I fucking hate Grievous. Can I say one of my least favorite things in all of Star Wars canon is General Grievous. I don't like him in the Clone Wars TV show. I don't care for his design. I don't really like the voice. I think he's superfluous. I hate his stupid spinny helicopter blade lightsaber shtick. I hate Grievous. I think he's a fucking dumb character.
Yeah, just so unnecessary as well, for sure.
Yeah, because we had Dooku. We set up Dooku in the last movie, and here's the thing: we rockied it. We let Dooku beat the bad. Dooku won. That's like pro wrestling 101, right? You have the bad guy beat the good guy the first time, so that it seems really insurmountable. You know what I mean? Like a little child brain goes, how are they going to do it? He's clearly better. He kicked Obi-Wan and Anakin's ass last movie. How are they going to overcome this guy? Oh no, they just do. They just do this time.
They just do. Just reasons. Just
reasons.
Just do.
Because you could, and I can already hear the smart asses going, yeah, well, they worked together this time. No, they didn't. They worked together for 8 seconds until Obi-Wan got knocked unconscious, and Anakin beats him on his own. The thing he couldn't do in the last movie. Yeah, but he said his powers have doubled since last time. I don't care. That's fucking bullshit.
We veered away from the fight. Look, the actual action of them fighting, I thought was okay. I didn't particularly think it was too long. I wish they'd done more, as cheesy as it was. I wish they'd done more dialogue throughout, but then equally, I really hate the dialogue at the end.
In the movie in general, yeah.
I had the higher ground stuff. So, yeah, I hate the way also... Well, I guess to some degree, Obi-Wan sends out Padme to try and talk him down before appearing then.
Well, he doesn't send her out. He lets her go out, because Obi-Wan does his classic sneaking around tactic twice in this movie, and I fucking love, because that's classic Obi-Wan. Like in New Hope, when he gets onto the Death Star, and he's like, okay, Luke and Han, you go save the princess, okay? Make a bunch of noise, distract everyone. I'm going to go do something useful. It's clever, and he does it twice in this movie, because when he lands on that, I always forget the name of the planet, the Grievous, Utapu, the planet that Grievous is on. Obi-Wan lands and then pretends like he's left. He sends his ship up without him, but he's actually there with his hood up. He's like, "Oh, I'm Obi-Wan and I'm hiding." Although he only hides for 10 seconds before he just reveals himself. So why he did that, I'll never know. He might as well just run up to Grievous to start with, but whatever. But then in this movie, he does it again later on when Padme's like, "I won't tell you where Anakin is." He's like, "Okay, well, I think he killed a bunch of children. I'll leave you with that information and do what you will. Bye." And then obviously Padme immediately goes to find him to find out if that's true, and he's just like, "I'll sneak onto your ship, bitch. Suck it." Obi-Wan all the way. And he hides in the ship, and then so when Padme comes out to confront Anakin, she has no idea Obi-Wan's even on that ship, which is really funny, because he poses in the doorway. He's stood in a hero pose in the doorway waiting for Anakin to notice him. I wonder how long he was there for. Just listening to the conversation.
A while, I reckon.
Anyway.
So I didn't find my issues with the fight are not the length.
Yeah,
maybe that's the conclusion.
Yeah, I just there's an element of it's all inevitable as well that I don't think because I think I know who's going to win this fight, but so at least give me an emotionally satisfying thing. But again, we just they just don't like each other anymore. Okay, what am I investing in here? I'm not It's CGI backgrounds and two people doing really good choreography in the middle of them, while fake lava
I think
spits
the challenge is it highlights how weak Anakin's arc is, because what you actually want is the thing they could be doing. It's not necessarily a complete status quo. The thing they could be doing is Obi-Wan could be hounding him about why he's done this. That's what the heart of that scene could be.
You're right.
And maybe even to some degree trying to pull him back. But they don't do that, because you can't pull at that thread too much, because it's fucking weak.
Yeah, you know what? That's the scene. It's Obi-Wan challenging every choice he's made throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And the more he does it, the more vicious, the more angry Anakin gets. And he's deliberately... Because he has to kill Anakin. That's the goal. He has to stop the Sith. Anakin's the Sith now. Yoda says it. Anakin's gone. Darth Vader is all that remains. And even though Obi-Wan doesn't 100% believe that, you could do it where it's what's happening in the fight is Obi-Wan is challenging those viewpoints because he's looking for any sign that Anakin is still in there. And Anakin is doing nothing but getting angrier and angrier and proving more and more that he's beyond saving. Then Obi-Wan has to make the upsetting choice to, get the high ground, so to speak. And that's a hard moment for him. That's the emotional crux that the fight should be focused on. But instead, it's... I've decided you're too far gone. You've decided I'm the reason Padme hates you, so we're going to fight. And there's such an obvious, brilliant emotional center to that fight that you've laid out there that I've sort of jumped on and latched onto because I think that works really well. How we didn't do that breaks my brain, because that's what the fight should have been about. But it's the problem with all three of these movies. They're all soulless when they shouldn't be. It's the same criticism we had for Phantom Menace.
I think the reason they didn't do that is because the movie or the script doesn't know why Anakin's turned. that doesn't do enough.
Well,
to
no,
justify.
it does know. It just it knows 5 different reasons and it can't pick which one. Which is, I think, somehow worse. Because when you've got 5 reasons, you don't get to explore any of them properly. They're all just very thin, half-mentioned, half-baked ideas. That is the other issue with doing like a few different reasons why he's turned, is like just from a script writing perspective, you don't get to flesh any of them out because you've got to elaborate on all of them to some degree. So you're wasting script time. Every scene that's about saving Padme could have been used to make more sense of his politics, or every scene that's politics could have been used to justify his increasing desperation over saving Padme. One or the other would have made the other one better if you just chopped it out, because you could have taken the time and used it for that. Yeah. So, bad movie, right? I think that's...
Yeah, no, it's not a good movie.
No.
What else you got?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the other elements. We've not covered everything. I don't like that Obi-Wan's a pilot in this, like a proper like jet, like fighter pilot. I think the opening of this movie, Anakin should have been piloting the ship. Obi-Wan should have been behind him, terrified because Anakin's doing crazy daredevil stuff in the ship. I don't know why you put them both in a weird fighter, because like Obi-Wan described Anakin as the best fighter pilot in the galaxy, and yet they're both flying pretty well as far as I could tell, like almost identically to each other. Yeah, bothered me. Let's talk. See if we got anything bigger. We talked about Order 66. We talked about how Anakin's arc doesn't work. Did you buy any of the stuff of their love story at the beginning of this movie? Because our big criticism of the last movie was that we didn't believe those two were a couple by the end at all. They did nothing but give Anakin red flags. So how did you feel watching this? Now they're together. Did they do anything to re-justify their love for each other to you?
No, it's just that they're together. It's just being told, well, they're together. I think the scenes where she sneaks to see him. The complete lack of clarity, like, between Obi-Wan thinks this, but then later, Anakin's the father, isn't he? It's like, what? We've established... I thought you knew. Like, we said that earlier, didn't we? Like, what's happening here? No, it's slightly better, only in the sense that we don't have to watch the scenes of them falling in love again. Like, given how bad those scenes were, it's nice that it's just, right, okay, they're a couple. Cool. No, I didn't think that was done at all, particularly. I do on them. I have a wider question, unless you have anything on the love story to add.
No, I just think it's one of those moments where the movie tells you they're together and that they're in love, and you just have to take it at its word, because it's not going to demonstrate that to you. It's pretty classic George Lucas screenwriting, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Cool. Here's a question.
Yeah.
This might be a controversial take. I think again, but more so than Attack of the Clones, I think the script is awful. What he's being told to do is awful. I suspect how he was directed wasn't particularly strong. I don't think Hayden Christensen is particularly giving a bad performance, especially in some of the scenes where he's turned. Justifying the turn, yeah. Or there's plenty of dodgy stuff, but I think a lot of it is the script. I think as a performance, it is actually quite menacing in parts, and it is quite tortured. So I don't think, again, but more so than Attack of the Clones, I don't think any of this is Hayden's fault, and I don't think his acting is that bad here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There are a couple of scenes where he's particularly stilted. There's a really bad one, and I'm going to put that down to direction, like on the set on the day, because why would you choose that take? Like, do it again. Like, talk to your actor and sort of, work with them through it, because as many of the cast of Star Wars, the original trilogy, have said over the years, you can write this stuff, but you can't say it. So sometimes when you're a younger actor and you're given this sort of word salad that is the George Lucas dialogue, you've just got to try it a few different ways until you can find something that sounds at least passably natural. There's a scene when he's with Palpatine, and Palpatine's telling him that he's going to be on the council, and his delivery is genuinely dreadful. Like genuinely, like it's bad acting. But I think it's on the director. Every actor. Well, okay, any person, any skill in any field is going to have their good days, their bad days, right? If you don't think of your favorite musician. If you don't think your favorite musician has written songs and gone, oh my God, that's fucking dreadful, and then binned it immediately to never be released, you know what I mean? Like most artists will do lots of work and select the top stuff to be the stuff they put out, right? Music is the cleanest example of that. Most artists sort of describe having 20-odd songs and then sort of cutting it down to whatever the album ends up being. Lucas, as the director, was responsible here for either choosing a better take or getting a better take out of the actor. No one nails it every time, but it feels like Lucas went, go, they did it, and he went, cut, got it, and moved on. That's what it feels like happened. And that is absolutely not Hayden's fault, because there are loads of points in this movie where he's absolutely nailing it, right? Just killing it. Delivering the bad dialogue well, as you said, looking menacing, looking tortured, all that stuff. Really giving it a good old go. And that is not even including the physical side to what he does. Later in the movie, I keep talking about how well choreographed that final lightsaber battle is, because it's fucking amazing. They're not sped up in that footage. They both learnt to do that. And you can watch the documentary and you can see them doing that. It's astounding. So he's doing a lot of really good work in this movie. So when I get a moment like that where it comes across really stilted, I know he's capable of delivering it well because he's worked well in loads of other scenes in the movie. So do another fucking take. Identify that delivery didn't quite work. Have a chat with your actor. Figure out maybe a better way in, something like that. Whatever I'm not a director. I've never been a director. I don't work with actors like that. But a good director would do that. But George famously, at best, tells his directors, his actors, and I've talked about this in the other podcast, but famously, George Lucas's direction usually can be summed up as faster, more intense. And he never really works with the actors beyond that. And it's obvious. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. It's not to say he doesn't have clunkers in this movie, because he does. But I 100% agree with the hypothesis that this is nowhere near his fault. Nowhere near his fault. Because he's been in other stuff and been good consistently. And I just think when someone's capable of delivering, not everything they spin is going to be gold, and you've got to be willing to spot it when it doesn't work and fix it on the day. Do another take. That's the purpose of takes. If every actor was nailing it 110% of the time, then the takes wouldn't ever exist. You would only do a second take if the boom got in shot. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'd never need to do another go. But yet, famously, most things have multiple takes for a fucking reason, because you're trying to get the performances right.
Dan, let's not talk about the boom getting in shot, okay, or things like that happening, just in case Christian Bale's listening. Right?
So yeah, I agree with you. That was a long way for me to say I agree, but that's what. Are
you ready for needless fan service of the week?
Oh yeah, please.
Needless fan service of the week. Why did Yoda need to be on a planet full of Chewbaccas in this movie, Dan?
Ah, yes. Yeah, Kashyyyk. Yeah, let's talk about this, because this has gotten a lot of criticism, and I actually don't mind this, because I think what this is trying to do is, when we have Order 66, as you pointed out, we don't know any of these Jedi. We're not invested in whatever we know skirmishes are happening across the galaxy, right? That's where the movie starts. The galaxy is engulfed in war. The Separatists and the Republic are fighting. So you just know there's battles happening everywhere. The Jedi are scattered, right? We do the montage of all of the, Order 66, all of them turning. My feeling is that the reason we do a sequence on Kashyyyk of Yoda working with the Wookiees to fight off the Trade Federation is so that when Order 66 happens and we're cutting to our Jedi having their clones turn on them, at least one of them is someone we'd previously established was where they are. But the choice to put Chewbacca specifically in there, less so. needless. Why? Why did we do this? I do not know. Why did we have to make Yoda and Chewbacca good buddies? Where he's like, I will miss you, Chewbacca. You know, why? Why is that a thing? What's fucking happening here?
For the fans. For the fans, Dan, that's why.
And the original idea was actually to have Chewbacca be with a small boy, like an orphan boy that he'd befriended that was going to become Han Solo.
Oh wow! But that's not how Han Solo got his name.
No, he got his name at essentially a space bus stop when they were checking his passport ID. So yeah, no, it is needless fan service. Having Chewbacca, I don't object to having Yoda be off in a combat situation though, because it establishes the galaxy at war. We're not just told about it; we are seeing it, which I like, and it also gives us at least one other place to cut to that we're like, oh, I knew that was happening. Whereas so many of those like random Jedi off being, murdered, I'm like, what were you up to? Why were you on that planet doing that? I don't know.
Speaking of Yoda at war, I think the Yoda fight scenes are much better in this movie. Feel much more realistic, feel a bit grittier, feel a bit more like the Yoda we're seeing fighting, less sort of zipping around like the Count Dooku one in Attack. I didn't mind the Yoda fight scenes here.
It's better. They've pulled it back a bit, but it's still not. It still doesn't work for me. It's one of my least favorite sequences in the movie because I just think I get it using the Senate room because it's a really cool location. You know, those floaty space pod things where they're all around, and when you get to speak, yours floats up. You know, we showed that in like Phantom Menace. That's how that works when the Senate is in session. So I think setting a fight scene in there and having people with strong force powers flinging those things at each other, that's all super cool. But the lightsaber stuff doesn't work again for me. Yoda flipping about with his lightsaber, that breaks. But one of my favorite moments in the whole movie happens right before that fight, which is Yoda walks in, the most useless guards in cinema history. He just waves his hand and they both just bang against the wall and collapse. I actually had to pause it. I was laughing so hard. That is fucking funny. I loved that scene. But yeah, I don't care. I don't care for it. But I tell you what, it really bothers me about that scene. Yoda and Obi-Wan have a moment before that fight happens, and Yoda's like, "Look, you're not powerful enough to take on Palpatine, and also you know, Anakin's your mess. Clean it up." That's not what he says, but he basically says that. Anakin's your mess. Go clean it up. I'm going to go deal with Palpatine. So the plan is, there's 2 Sith, as far as we know. If the 2 Jedi that are here right now can kill the 2 Sith that are out there, we can end this. Which is a very sensible plan. Yoda goes in, he starts fighting Palpatine, and then at a certain point, Yoda just gives up. He just runs away.
And just like, yeah, it's bizarre.
But not after any particular defeat, other than losing his lightsaber. But he was fine. He was still fighting after that. I don't know. The movie doesn't do enough to justify to me Yoda's retreat. Like if he'd been nearly crushed, or he was like, unconscious, and he like just crawled into a vent, like he was really on the brink of death and he got away, I'd feel differently about it. But he just, at a certain point, he just goes, yeah, I guess I'm not winning this one, and he gives up. But like, I'm not
unless he just
privy to that choice.
Unless that's just his knowledge, that's just, he knows that to be the case.
Sure, but tell me that when he gets in the car with what's his face, have him say, I realized I couldn't win that fight. But even that's saying, not showing, which is still shit. You should show it in the movie.
He does have some dialogue, like "I failed" or something like that. Oh, that's speaking of Yoda and dialogue. Mm-hmm. The scene where Yoda and Palpatine are first chatting before they start fighting, just the weirdest fucking inconsistent. Some lines are weird Yoda speak backwards, some lines are normal, and the Yoda speak backwards ones don't really work because you have to take a moment to work them out
because they're too
genuinely
long. The sentences are too long for it to work. It's okay if it's a short sentence. Speak backwards, I will. That's fine because it's a short sentence. You hear the end and the beginning close enough together that you can do it. But when it's a run-on sentence, it does not work.
I was like, am I watching Michael and Holly from The Office, write these scenes?
I 100% agree.
I'm gonna.
Although, to be honest with you, I was less bothered by that on the grounds that I just watched Yoda like wave his hand and the two, Imperial Emperor's guards just immediately just hit the wall and collapsed, which I was still laughing at by the time that scene was happening. I agree with you though, the dialogue's terrible.
Padme's death of a broken heart, losing the will to live. What are your thoughts?
Real shit.
Cool. Concise.
Nice. Anything else? Why couldn't she have gotten injured at Anakin's hands? In the version of the movie we're writing, where in our heads, where Anakin and Obi-Wan's fight is over Anakin's soul, where Obi-Wan's not quite, he's losing because he's not quite convinced there isn't good in him, and so he's struggling to pull the trigger on killing Anakin. And Anakin's getting angrier and angrier and angrier because Obi-Wan is pushing and pushing and challenging him on all of the choices he's made up to this point. Anakin, knocking a thing over in his rage that crushes Padme or knocks Padme over or, hurts her somehow. Something that's his own fault would be way more powerful than what happens here. Because he strangles her a bit. And I thought, oh, she's dying because he's crushed her throat in his rage. And even though the lame thing would be they'd have to explain that in dialogue, she's dying because he crushed her throat, and unfortunately, she's not going to recover from that. She's struggling to breathe. Blah blah blah. She's going to panic. She's not going to she's not going to survive that. We don't even get that. It's she's physically fine. They actually say it. She's physically fine, but she's still dying because she's got a broken.
You know what
heart.
it is? It's
so dumb.
It's almost like the script. It's almost like Lucas feels like the audience. It feels like if he kills Padme, in his head, it will take away from his redemption at the end, even though we've just seen him kill a load of children. It's almost like Padme is a step too far, him actually killing Padme.
Younglings,
younglings,
Chris. We can't actually say he killed children because we don't want to get an R rating, so he killed younglings.
Younglings, apologies. Younglings. Or it's lazy writing in the sense of he wanted to do Palpatine's manipulation at the end, and we wanted to do Palpatine saying, "Well, you killed her," as the kind of final straw, which is a good idea, sure, but just the way it's done again, the execution. Here's another question. I'm going to fire questions at you, Dan. Here's another question. Taking out what happened after, taking out that we got an excellent TV series that filled in the gap, based purely on these movies, given that at the end of the last one, it's the beginning of the Clone Wars, and in this one, we don't see too much of it, and we're just sort of told about it, and then it's over. We see a little bit of we get the idea Palpatine's manipulating shit, but we don't really see or explore it. Given what these movies do with it, do you think it was worth putting the Clone Wars in this trilogy?
I think you had to do something to establish how a democratic body became a dictatorship, and I think our war is really the most likely explanation of how someone got those kinds of powers, or fear-mongering of a war. The US government after 9/11 passed a bunch of bills that gave away a lot of privacy from American citizens. A lot of American citizens gave up certain privacies related to if certain agencies in the US thought that their phone logs were related to a terror attack, they could then potentially get more access. So then that's a privilege that they were able to give up, or they were happy to give up in the wake of the fear of 9/11. And I wasn't expected to have to talk about 9/11 on this podcast, but history has shown us that when people lose their freedoms, when we go from a free democratic, political system to not that, it's usually because some element of war or fear has been, manipulated, has been used to make people want to hand someone that kind of power. It's exactly what Hitler did. So you're going to have to put some kind of war in these movies anyway. Well, first of all, it's called Star Wars. I guess that kind of is the... I think wars is part of it. So I guess if you're going to have to do that no matter what, you might as well make it the one Obi-Wan referenced in New Hope. Because also you're telling the story of Obi-Wan and Anakin, and he said Anakin fought alongside me in the Clone Wars. So you're kind of locked into showing it to some degree. And I guess...
Dan, sorry. Dan, I just need to interrupt you there. Right, listen, I'm sorry, Dan. Either use your voice or commit to an Obi-Wan impression, okay? That weird sort of halfway house you did there, where you sort of didn't want to quite do it. These are your two choices, buddy, okay? For me, commit or just use your voice.
All right.
I just want to. It may sound a bit harsh, but I feel quite passionately about it because I enjoy your Obi, and it comes from my enjoyment and affection for your Obi-Wan voice. I want you to know that. That's where this anger comes from. Okay, and I apologize.
What if I it just did any voice for Obi-Wan, just a different it's just no, and it's not my voice, but it's just any voice, not even an Obi-Wan impression.
Okay, well let's see how that sounds.
I just made him like Mickey Mouse or something.
Yeah, go for it. Let's see how that...
Me and your dad fought in the Clone Wars, huh?
Yeah, it doesn't work as well.
No, it's not as good.
It's weird.
Or I just made him really English. like Northern or something. He's like, Luke, get that lightsaber into the room over there, and I'll tell you about how me and your dad fought in the Clone Wars.
That's like the notion that we never got. The Peter Kay went to whatever studio it is, Fox, and genuinely pitched him remaking shot for shot Die Hard with complete sincerity, but it would be called Die Wellard, and it would be set in a store in Manchester. The fact that we never got that is heartbreaking.
That does sound good. I would definitely watch that. So yeah, I think to get us back on track, because I'm aware how long these tend to get, these Star Wars episodes of Rewind Reviews, I think you're going to have to include a war. We know that war happened during Anakin and Obi-Wan's time together. I think you kind of had to do it. I think that he was a bit boxed in on that front, if I'm being honest. Did he have to structure it like this, where we saw the war start at the end of movie 2 and end in movie 3? What we probably should have done is start it in movie 1 of the trilogy, have movie 2 set during it, and then have movie 3 be the end of it. That's probably what should have happened if we were being real sticklers for just a sensible structure. Story structure 101. You start the thing, you escalate the thing, then you end the thing, rather than you start the thing at the end of a movie, you skip the part where you escalate it, then you end it really randomly in the next movie with a weird thing where you keep insisting that General Grievous, once he's dead, the Clone War is over. When General Grievous is dead, the Clone Wars are over. When General Grievous is dead, this is over. Then you kill General Grievous, and then you say, yeah, now you have to go to Mustafar and kill all the other people, or this war won't be over. Didn't the movie just spend an hour and a half telling me Grievous, once he's dead, it's over? Wait, what? So yeah, it doesn't work in its form here, but that's just because of bad execution. I think there's no version of this that you can avoid the Clone Wars. That's my honest feelings on it.
Fair.
How did you feel about the attempts at humor in the opening act of this movie? Because we talked a lot last week about I wasn't thrilled with all the stupid C-3PO puns. They felt out of place. This movie does some some sort of slapstick stuff right up top with R2 a lot, or even Obi-Wan and Anakin, the lift goes down, Anakin jumps out, then it comes back up, but it's, Obi-Wan's yelling on the microphone, R2 set the lift up, but obviously the other droids can hear it, so R2's getting in trouble because of it, then he uses oil and he burns them. Did that stuff land for you, or no?
No, not at all. Like I said earlier, it felt too cartoonish. R2D2 executing powers. Where was the oil lighting the oil stuff previously? I guess that went when his mind got wiped at the end. No, I thought the humor at the beginning, and again, it's one of the reasons it feels so like two movies for me. Like bizarre, like comedy and opening, and really weird. And then we have Anakin kill a dude by decapitating him with 2 lightsabers.
And we literally see the head roll as well, which is pretty cool. The dialogue that followed that really baffled me. Like he did a proper Hagrid. Oh, he shouldn't have done that. Oh, he shouldn't have done that. And then Palpatine's next to him, like it's only natural to want revenge. Like what? Yeah. Like again, how does Anakin? Like how much of a dummy does this script make Anakin look like? You know what it is? It's the Lois Lane problem. I think the longer you leave in any adaptation of Superman, Lois Lane not knowing that he's Superman, the dumber your adaptation's version of Lois Lane begins to look. She's supposed to be an investigative reporter, right? At a certain point, she's got to figure it out. And I honestly prefer quickly. I think, it's one of the things I can compliment Man of Steel for, because their version of Lois Lane is a competent journalist and is like, it's obviously you, right? She's too close to him to not figure this out. You know what I mean? So I have a thing here where I'm watching this movie and like, the more Anakin doesn't know Palpatine is a Sith, the dumber he looks. It just carries on.
Speaking of, what did you think of Palpatine's transformation? Mace Windu getting something to do, and did you think that was kind of well done, or?
I mean, well done's a strong word, but it's fine, right? He can be an ugly boogly, lightning struck monster man. That's okay. I mean, I kind of in my head canon for when I my imagination when I saw Palpatine in the original trilogy was that it was his like years of being evil and so entrenched in the Force sort of shaped his body. It's almost the Voldemort thing, but before I'd read Harry Potter, where like he was so evil, he'd done so much bad stuff, it had almost shifted his body. Like he was so truly evil. His like DNA almost shifted around him, like, and that's why he was like an ugly boogly monster man. That was my headcanon, which is funny because then obviously that idea did crop up in a book series that young me then got very into, with the Harry Potter stuff. So I could easily sit here and go, that's not how child me imagined he was, all messed up and like sort of marked and sort of misshapen in his face, but like I'm okay with it being a lightning reflected and hitting him thing. That's fine, right? Like it's weird that he then shows up to the Senate looking like the most evil man, and he's like, "Give me power." They're like, "This doesn't seem suspicious
Unlimited power."
Limited power. This doesn't seem suspicious at all. We're going to make an empire. Oh, sure, that sounds democratic. Does that sound democratic to you? 'Cause apparently, we're all really into this. I will say actually one thing. I'll tell you, to talk about some things I like about this movie. Oh, actually, no, we didn't get your thoughts on that. Did you bringing that up makes me think maybe you're not as into the lightning misshapening him thing, or you don't have thoughts?
No, I liked it. It was actually I thought it was wicked. I've always liked that element. I think it was cool to witness and see. I think, and the fact that he doesn't look exactly, the fact that he's Palpatine but younger still, like it's not like that transformation turned him into exactly what he becomes. I thought all of that sort of detail and stuff was quite cool, and I like that. Genuinely, all joking aside, I like that Mace Windu was involved in that, and that there was something for him to do.
Yeah. I agree. And it leads to. And
I think it would have been cool to have him mentioned after. But there we go.
Well, I think Samuel L. Jackson has said that in his headcanon, Mace Windu didn't die. He's still out there somewhere, and he's one day.
I mean, that would be wicked.
I'd be up for that.
But
I'd be up for that.
It's crazy. If Samuel L. Jackson is willing to do that, it's crazy to me that they've not done that.
He said he'd do it. He said he'd do it.
That's such a lower hanging fruit in a way than even like the Han Solo or Obi-Wan series, because there's all the connections to that, and there's it feels like you've got to get that right. Whereas Mace Windu, I think you've got more freedom. I know Mark Bernardin, I don't know if it's set after Revenge of the Sith, but I know Mark Bernardin has written a Mace Windu comic, which is meant to be quite good. But yeah, I don't know when it's set.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but I agree with you. Mace Windu has a reasonably large amount to do in here, and he gets to do some interesting stuff. Like the scene Anakin comes to tell him, another one of those moments where I'm like, from a different script, this is a great scene, but like, why has Anakin immediately run to tell Mace Windu? Because didn't 2 scenes ago, didn't we say he didn't trust the Jedi because they hadn't put him on the council? So he was mad about that, but now he's like immediately telling on Palpatine, who he's already said he trusts. Which is it, movie? Like, actually settle on consistent character choices, please, because I don't really understand why this is happening. But anyway, individually, that scene where he tells Mace Windu that Palpatine's a Sith Lord, like, even though the dialogue is utterly dire, Samuel Jackson's like, the stuff he does, and this is going to sound ridiculous, the stuff he does with his eyebrows in that moment when he turns around, the way his face shifts the minute he hears those words, it's brilliant. He communicates so much with his facial expression, more than those terrible words will ever do. So yeah, no, 10 points to Samuel Jackson for this movie in general, actually. He's very good in it. So I wrote down some good things. Would you like to hear some things I liked about the movie?
Yeah, man, I'd love to.
I wrote down that I actually like one of the lines of dialogue in the movie, which is surprising because the movie is mostly bad. I wrote down, so this is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. That's a great line. That's a great line. I don't know where I assume he stole that, but it's a great line. It's powerful. I really love, there's a shot early in the movie when they crash the ship, and the camera pans from the nose of the ship as it's pulling in and slowing down up to the like cockpit they're in. The visual effects don't really hold up too much, but the actual choice of shot as a dynamic way to show the ship crashing and then move in on them in the cockpit, brilliant. It's a great shot. There's a really good conversation early in the movie with Anakin and Yoda when he first has the dream about Padme. And it actually, I think, clears up some of the Jedi and attachment questions we had from the previous movies. You know, Yoda gave that really nonsensical, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, you know, and all that stuff. That nonsense, which was like, just, he could have literally said anything, you know what I mean? Like, being cold leads to frustration, frustration leads to wanting a cup of tea to warm up, you know, it's just like random words thrown in, one leads to the other. Okay, sure. Anyway, so they have a conversation in this movie about his visions, and Yoda sort of says, attachment is dangerous for a Jedi because fear of losing a thing that you're attached to is a path to the dark side. And that actually makes a huge amount of sense to me. You have to accept that death is a natural part of life to be a Jedi. Yoda's advice is to train himself to let go of everything he fears to lose. And this is a really common theme in many forms of media. Avatar: The Last Airbender did a version of this idea, with Aang not being able to detach from his feelings for Katara, and the idea of, this idea that maybe villainous people will cling to life overall, when actually a truly wise and good person might maybe accept that death is a part of life and actually what makes life special. And, Harry Potter did that storyline. All the bad guys were, like, particularly Voldemort, were determined to stay alive by any means, regardless of the morality of those means. Whereas Harry accepted death. It's a bizarrely coherent, interesting scene that actually makes sense to some of the nonsense Jedi speak, that like the drivel he's written into other sequences in these movies, and I like it a lot. So it's a scene I enjoyed. I already talked about how I liked the scene where he's in the he's in the Jedi temple in the council room, and Padme's in her little suite, and they're both sort of looking out into the distance, and you sense them connecting without connecting. It's almost shot. Really great shot choices make you feel like they're in the same room. Like, for a second you go, did she come to see him? Like, the way they shoot it. It's really well done. One of my favorite. Again, the scene, once you pull out and the rest of the movie happens, it doesn't justify much, but it's a good scene in isolation. What else have I got?
While you're looking, I really liked the idea, and I didn't mind the execution of it, actually. I really liked the idea that when, in the opening battle, when the ship turns the other way, it gives them the ability to run up the elevator shaft. I thought that was a really imaginative idea.
Yeah, well, that's on my list, is that opening sequence for all of the slapstick stuff that maybe doesn't work. I actually think the most sort of exciting, interesting action sequences of this entire movie are in that opening act. You know, the most interesting stuff physically is happening. Whether it, you know, what it adds to the overall movie is a different discussion. But I think just as action sequences, they are very well thought out. Like the way the lift is moving up down, it's all very Star Wars and very interesting. And you're right, that sequence when the ship turns and it adjusts the way up that the elevator shaft is, that's great. 100% agree. I like the scene when they're all talking about how the choice they just made is a bad choice, like the Jedi. So it's Yoda and Mace Windu and Obi-Wan are in like a dropship, and they're literally like, yeah, Anakin's like, putting him with Palpatine is like probably a bad idea, right? We've already done it, but this isn't good. Obi-Wan is the only one in that scene that's like, I trust Anakin. And I just think that's really nice to have established. They're not just acting as one Jedi. They're not all just like saying random, vague nonsense like they usually do. They've got opinions. Like, Mace Windu is the one that fears the choice of putting Anakin and Palpatine together the most. Yoda's the one that's sort of sitting a bit more neutrally because he's just like, you know what? Look, we need to see how this plays out. Anakin's fate is still up in the air. And you've got Obi-Wan, who's grown up with him since he was a boy, who trusts him implicitly, which would, in a better movie, make the ending even more heartbreaking. And I like that scene a lot.
Yeah, I do think they do, and I think a lot of it is Ewan McGregor and the fact that they've got scenes like Ewan McGregor, like Obi-Wan saying, "You go take the acclaim. It's your day." I do think they do a good job of establishing that even since Attack of the Clones, their relationship has evolved, matured, and there is a connection there between them. The lack of cohesiveness with the Anakin side of things lets it down, but you feel that. You do feel growth between Anakin and Obi-Wan, for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think this movie does more for Anakin and Obi-Wan in convincing me they actually like each other and work together well than the last movie did at all. Like, it's
for sure.
By an absolute ton. On stuff I didn't care for, I mean, the fight between Obi-Wan and Grievous is a forgettable mess. No, thank you. Just take that movie. I don't care. Although it did give us the "Hello There" meme, which is nice. You know, hello there. You know, that's fun. There's elements of it, I guess, that people like, but like, yeah, I don't mind that Obi-Wan is on another planet. It's a Yoda situation, you know, Yoda on Kashyyyk. I'm okay with Obi-Wan being off on another planet, getting in a battle with clones, because that leads us to the Order 66 moment, and it's yet another Jedi we actually know and care about having his clones turn on him. Sorry. So I know why Obi-Wan is off on a mission, and I don't mind that, but the Grievous fight, I don't know. I think this just comes back to me really not enjoying Grievous as a character, though. That probably is a big part of it. Ian McDermott...
Yeah, he's a weak villain that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah. Especially because we established a much more interesting villain in Dooku. A fallen Jedi that's become a Sith. Like, how much we could do with that while we've got Anakin on the precipice of going the same way. Like, what? We have such an interesting parallel there, and we just go to this generic half-robot man guy. Like, I don't know. It's the least interesting choice.
Imagine if we got more scenes of that. We saw more Dooku, and just before Anakin killed him, Dooku looks to the ground and just goes, "I was wrong. I got it wrong," and then kills him. Like,
incredible. So much better. I wrote down the Jedi are deeply stupid in this movie. Why did they just go and attack Palpatine? That plays into his hands. What Anakin actually says right before he helps Palpatine with Windu is correct. They should take him to the Senate. They should make him stand trial. Anakin is right and Mace Windu is wrong. in that moment. Why is Mace Windu just like, I have to kill him? The Jedi are supposed to be above that, right?
Yeah, but again, I think and there's a line, Obi-Wan, I think someone has a line alluding to it's not all dark side, light side, that there's shades and stuff like that here. And there's a really clever idea in that. Mace, it executed poorly, this element of it, but Mace Windu is one of the things that tips Anakin into going, no, Palpatine's right, he's trying to kill him, I'm on board, even though it's executed badly, because Palpatine then kills Mace Windu and has that ultimate power shit. But, okay, the notion that Mace Windu is one of the things that turns him, the notion that the Jedis get in their own way all the time, the notion that Mace Windu has it wrong, and that in turn, but not to quote controversial Star Wars, but is the touch paper that lights the flame and all of that sort of stuff. That's a clever, interesting idea. It's executed badly in this movie.
Yeah, because because this whole idea that the Jedi's arrogance is their downfall. That is technically in this movie, in that they are idiots. They don't see it coming. They act poorly when he does it. But the movie never actually outright implies this beyond that's what you can infer from those. So the movie frames the Jedi as the correct good guys that are making the right choices. That's how they're framed in the movie. Because the movie never challenges them. No one in the movie goes, hey, have Padme be like, guys, what are you doing? These are bad choices you're making. Have Padme be the voice of reason. Have her go to try to speak to Obi-Wan because she's worried about Anakin, but she walks in on a Jedi meeting. There's Mace Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan are all there or whatever, and they're like, yeah, we think we're gonna have Anakin spy on. She overhears them saying they're having Anakin spy on Palpatine. She's like, if you think he's suspicious, why aren't you bringing this to the Senate, you absolute morons? Have someone say that out loud in the movie to make it actually part of the text, not an accidental thing you can infer because the movie's written badly. Because supplemental media has done a great job of exploring the Jedi's bad choices here. Even The Last Jedi has a whole, big part of Luke's arc in The Last Jedi is he studied their history and gone, yeah, the Jedi didn't work. They fucked up. They're the reason the Empire rose. It was under their noses. They missed it. Then they made terrible choices once they found it. They played into they played into Palpatine's hands with every single choice they made. Asking Anakin to spy on him was a terrible idea because it just gave Palpatine ammo to turn Anakin by saying, oh, what, they don't trust me? They're sending you to do lying and sneaky stuff? They don't seem like the good guys to me. By not revealing his Sith nature to the Senate, they allowed him to just continue to be a popular guy that's being voted for because he's doing great work. And, if he defeats the Separatists and unites the galaxy under the Empire, the Separatist planets all return to Republic control, and he now calls it that makes him seem like a hero. He's ending the war that they're all tired of. The Jedi needed to expose him in a smart way. Obi-Wan finds a recording of Sidious being like, "Rise, Darth Vader," which means they were recording him the whole time. Why didn't they watch the footage back?
Yeah, because my memory
play that footage to the Senate.
My memory of that scene was, I guess I think maybe it's too far gone then, but my memory of that scene was that it was the footage was Anakin, walking to kill the younglings or something like that, or him opening the door, or maybe they did have, but the notion that seemingly everywhere has cameras. You're like, what the fuck? They have lines about being suspicious of him earlier on in the movie. Check the fucking footage.
Unbelievable. It's mind-melting. That
mad.
It really is.
The notion of security, they should have done. They even have, in one of the movie's more horrific moments, they have Obi-Wan and Yoda go in with the younglings. Have a youngling survive and say, it was Anakin. The notion of there being security cameras in this world is fucking mad.
But it's because George wanted the movie's end to be all the Jedi but those two are dead. That's what he wanted. He wanted to really seal it up. That's what he wanted. He didn't want a youngling to have survived. Because that makes...
No, that's their dying breath. We see them die. It's horrific. I'm not disputing that, but just or someone's told or just have Yoda go. Obi-Wan go, I want to know what happened. I want to know who did this. And have Yoda quietly go, you know who did this.
Search your feelings. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You're right. Or that librarian lady that was snooty to Obi-Wan in the last movie, because I don't think she's like, I don't know a lot about that character. I know she's appeared in Clone Wars stuff. I don't remember what they do with her in Clone Wars, but that snooty librarian, like maybe she's not a Jedi, so she's like, she can survive. She's like, she's injured under a big pile of books or something, space books. They find her. She says it if you want to do it that way. But no, I think the better way is have Yoda be like, search your feelings. You know what's true. I wrote down another example of Anakin's weird, like, they're doing the two plots and they don't work together. So he says he'll do whatever Palpatine says to save Padme, implying that it's not an ideological thing. He just wants to save Padme, right? But then he immediately goes to see Padme and says the Jedi... This is like minutes, seconds even later. And he says the Jedi didn't remain loyal to the Republic and they turned on the Republic. Why does he believe that now? A minute ago, he didn't believe that. He was saying that Palpatine should be going on trial. So he knows that's not true. So why is he saying it? Has he been ideologically turned? What? Like, it doesn't... yeah. He knows it's more complicated than that, and yet he's not telling her. And you could go, well, it's because he's hiding it from her. Okay, sure, but then why is he doing that? Like, is it shame? We're not exploring that then? What is that choice? Anyway, that just annoyed me. When her security guy, I wrote down as well, when her security guy, Padme, says you shouldn't go to that planet alone, bring security, he's right. But she says, no, it's okay. C-3PO will protect me. Okay. I wrote that down because it was ridiculous. When Anakin, I wrote this down too. Right. Go on.
No, I was trying to think of an add-on to that, but yeah, there's nothing.
The thing with that is, it's just funny on its own. I don't need to make a joke about that moment. Yeah. That moment it's on its own ridiculous. As is, I wrote down this dialogue. This is real dialogue from the movie, right? This is Anakin runs in, Mace Windu and Palpatine are shooting lightning and whatever at each other, and they're like, get him. No, don't get him. This is genuine dialogue. He's a traitor. No, he's a traitor. George Lucas wrote that on paper and then gave it to actors to say.
I can't remember what the one that really made me laugh was, but there was one where I literally just, and it was like quite a small moment, but I just went, just out loud. I can't remember what it was.
We haven't even talked about the worst moment.
Oh, we're about to say the same thing.
Well, maybe go on.
Sorry.
Go on. What were you going to talk about?
I was going to say we've not addressed a big one yet.
Are you referring to no?
I am indeed. I am indeed.
That was my best Darth Vader saying no impression. How did I do?
It was good. I enjoyed it. Do you want me to give it a go?
Oh, please. Absolutely.
No!
It's good. Yours is good. I enjoyed it. It's ridiculous. It's the cheesiest, weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. I cannot... this is another one of those, if Lucas hadn't surrounded himself with yes men moments, someone would have gone, Luke, George, just have a private conversation just over here. I've seen the current edit of the Darth Vader scene, the menacing villain from the next movies, and this is our big reveal of him becoming the villain he's going to be. The menacing presence, the scary, having him lamely go, no, hurts that. Stop. Take it out. Please. You can have
it really does, because
it's amazing how pathetic it makes that character look.
And a huge shame, because that moment is cool. The rising of it, like how shiny the suit is,
Yep.
Palpatine's manipulation by saying he killed him, like it's all good stuff.
Even the choice,
and then it's just,
even the choice that when he tells him that, all the stuff on the walls shakes and crushes, like the Force energy is like that. Even that's like menacing stuff. Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, and like the way the when you hear James Earl Jones's voice, do you know what I mean? When you hear the "Yes, Master," oh, it's so cool.
So undone by that no, and the fact that no one told George
So
how
undone.
lame that was really bothers me. Yeah, so that sequence in general is very good. The sequence of essentially Vader being born alongside Luke and Leia being born is very clever. Like, you know, that's great. And let's actually compliment another thing that I wrote down as a thing I like about this movie. I will say one thing about, well, this is actually a compliment for all three of these movies in general. The evolution into recognizable Star Wars from a production design perspective is art. It's beautiful. It's incredible. The way the ships and the interiors of those ships and the costuming and all that stuff slowly tips towards what we know and recognize by the end of this movie is incredible. You know, last movie we introduced the clone troopers, who are kind of Stormtrooper-esque but kind of Mandalorian-esque, and in this movie their costumes become even more Stormtrooper-y. The helmets have a different shape to them now. They're more Stormtrooper-y. The spaceships that we had in the previous movie that the clone troopers used had a triangular shape, like those famous Imperial ships from New Hope, you know, the Empire's ships, but they had more color to them. They weren't quite exactly those shapes and sizes. They were very close, but they weren't there. This movie, they're even closer. By the end of this movie, we have a full-on, like, you know, really iconic, very recognizable Imperial sort of, I don't want to call it a cockpit, but, you know, like the main room of that particular battleship, where all the guys are working in those weird little trenches, and there's like the path over them, and, you know, and Vader and Palpatine stand there, and they're wearing those uniforms with those funny little pointy hats. Like, the way the movies slowly get us to the iconography of Star Wars by evolving the fashions and shapes and sizes of the ships is nothing short of astounding. And the work that the hundreds and thousands of people did to make that happen by designing every little nook and cranny of every single ship. And I don't care that it's still a problem, but the CGI is obviously not great, and the overuse of it is obviously still an issue in this movie. But for a second, I just want to give some praise to the wonderful production design people who did some incredible work, making us slowly go from the visual style we had in Phantom Menace of the world, the production design of the world, to something that is like, oh, that is recognizably the world New Hope starts in. And doing that in a convincing way is incredible.
The music's a big part of that as well.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
The way the overtures and the more well known Star Wars music comes in towards the end is fantastic. I will say as well about the scene of Yoda and the twins being born. This rewatch, and it was really in my mind, further cemented for me the benefit of the machete order, because that, you know, when they're like, it's twins, if you don't know yet, like, about Luke and Leia, that's a cool moment. Like, right. They're twins, and then when she names the other one Leia, I think that's a way more powerful way to, or interesting way to find that out than Luke and Leia just sort of having a chat.
Yeah, on that point for sure. We've talked about the machete order before. I don't love the machete order. I don't think it's ideal, if I'm being honest. It's fine if you're going back to them. I'm not sure it works as a first viewing personally, and we've had that conversation. But the thing is, neither of us will ever know, because we both watched it in the correct order first and then tried the machete order. So what we really need to do is find someone somewhere on this planet that's never seen Star Wars to test that with. Actually, we need to find multiple people who've never seen Star Wars, and then like give some of them the real order, some of them the machete order, and see how they react to it. Anyway,
has there ever been a better argument for having children? You know what I mean?
Oh my god. And lots of them to do this experiment on. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Nadia will buy that, though. as a reason.
No, I am joking. Just to be clear.
I did mention it briefly, but yes, obviously the CGI is still really bad in this movie, in the sense of, I don't think the CGI itself has aged poorly. For those who didn't listen to our Attack of the Clones review, my issue isn't that the movie uses lots of CGI. My issue is that the movie does not do enough practical stuff around the actors to make them blend into the CGI environments well. So many of the environments of this movie are almost entirely creations of CGI, and that is a mistake. I think what you need to do is build a baseline set with cameras and that you put in, and physical things that exist in a soundstage or on a location if you can afford that or deal with that, and then all of the backing should be your green screen, and then you can expand it and make it look bigger. And I think the worst point is Mustafar. I don't know why they couldn't just go up an old inactive volcano's like mountainside, film those two guys at night on real rocks in real locations, jumping around doing the Jedi stuff, and then CGI in the lava, and it would have been so much more weight to it, so much more tangible. It's a shame. And actually, you know what? I remember a comparison made in Mr. Blinkett's review of this movie, which I'm really looking forward to rewatching. We talked about these a few weeks ago. Very famous reviews of these three movies, which I've been dying to rewatch, but I've not done because I didn't want them to sort of influence this. But one point I do remember that he makes in one of these reviews, it might be the Attack of the Clones one, the other downside to shooting everything in these almost purely CGI environments is the characters can't move through them at speed because they're actually quite small spaces in the grand scheme of things. They're not as open. So, yeah, and I remember he compares it to the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie. There's a scene when Kirk realizes there's a problem in the ship, and because they really built real corridors, you can have Kirk barreling down them, bumping into people. You know, he's walking through a real space and he's running through it. Whereas in these movies, they're like Palpatine's a Sith, we better go get him. And then they just calmly walk out of the door because they can't run, because there isn't anywhere to run, because the space isn't small and isn't big enough to show characters running, because you can only go so much distance before you hit a wall or, you know, the edge of the green screen space. And it really did. It always feels like they're confined to these very small, weird rooms that are bigger through visual trickery, and you can tell they're only in a very confined space somehow, based on the way the blocking of each scene works. It's a huge problem. It's a problem throughout all three of these movies, really, but mostly the second two. I think there's a lot more effort made to do real world and physical things in the fronts of the frames in the first of these three movies. I think Phantom Menace is the best visually in that sense. Not to say there isn't some iconic imagery in this one in terms of the choices of where the camera is and what it's showing, but I think the choice to do such a high percentage of each shot as CGI remains a massive problem throughout Attack of the Clones in this. And I know I made that point on the last one, but it's still very true here. And that's really a shame. I have a couple of other little points I want to hit on. But is there anything else you want to, any bigger topics you want to talk about before I run through a couple of little ones?
No, give me a little ones.
Let's see what I got then. I do like, there is some really good stuff inside of Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin that we haven't really talked about. We have kind of covered most of this actually, looking at it. But like the idea that he kind of sets up with Anakin early on, that the Jedi might be plotting against the Republic, so that if they make a move against him, he can immediately claim that's them making their play for power. He sets that up really early in the movie, and it does properly show Palpatine as like a kind of master manipulator, because he's looking 2 moves ahead. He's thinking at some point the Jedi are going to figure this out, they're going to come for me. But if I lay the seeds now for why they might do that, other than that I'm a Sith, then I'm protecting myself a little bit. I thought that was kind of clever, and made him look more of a threat in terms of how he manipulates people. Let's see. Oh man. Oh, these are stuff we already talked about. Sorry, we've actually covered so much of this. I'm looking through them. I thought I had a bunch more notes, but actually... Oh, let's talk about I Have the High Ground, just for a minute. So the Mythbusters did this. They got in two expert swordsmen, and did several like fencing battles where one of them had the high ground, and the ratio of who won did not improve to the person. There was no trend towards having the high ground being an advantage. They also then did it themselves and were like, oh, if you're an amateur swordsman, is the high ground an advantage? Also, no. It was about 50-50. It's a really good episode of Mythbusters, and it is such a weird thing. Why couldn't Obi-Wan have just been like, you know, you're too lost in your feelings, you're too angry, you've lost. I'm winning this. You need to give up. Instead of just being like, I have the high ground.
Because Lucas thought it was clever. Lucas thought the dual meaning of it was really clever. The literal meaning, and also morally him having the high ground. That's why it's there. And that, for me, is what's so offensive about it. It's not necessarily the logistics of it. It's the fact that it thinks it's clever. Like, that's what winds me up about it.
Yeah. God, that's bad. It is really bad. Also, during that sequence, the line, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil, is one of the worst lines of dialogue in any of these three movies. Fucking terrible. Just dreadful slog. Ian McDiarmid is doing his best, but by the time they were making these movies, Ian McDiarmid was not a young man, and he could not convincingly wield a lightsaber. And the fight where he takes out like 3 Jedi and just leaves Mace Windu is extremely bad. It's shot awkwardly because they cut a ton to try and cut around Ian McDiarmid's physical limitations. It doesn't look convincing. He ends up slicing them all really slowly to the point you're like, they could have easily stabbed him before he stabbed them. It's just it's laughable basically. And it's a real shame because Ian McDiarmid deserves better, as does the character of Palpatine. I do like that Anakin almost immediately is thinking about overthrowing Palpatine himself. What he says to Padme is, "Okay, you don't like it, that's fine. We'll go kill Palpatine, and we can rule together." And what's really funny about that is, one, that leads into one of my favorite things about Star Wars lore that has always remained true, which is the reason there are never lots and lots of Sith is because they just keep fucking killing each other. They can't stop. They're so evil. They just keep stabbing each other in the back. So there's never more than a couple. It's a brilliant, weird, consistent truth that's just been true throughout Star Wars without anyone really ever deciding that was a rule. You just go back through any Star Wars media at all. That has just always been true, and it's amazing. It's my favorite thing. The amount of Sith apprentices that get either murder their master or are murdered by their master is absolutely mad. So Anakin immediately thinking of overthrowing Palpatine. But then, if they follow that up, and I wrote this in my notes, she says, "I don't know you anymore." I'm sorry, we talked about this. In the last movie, he pretty much gave away his politics and his leanings towards dictatorships in that field. Do you remember? Yeah. We had a whole conversation about it.
Yeah.
How is this I don't know you anymore?
And he killed a bunch of people then as well. A move she forgave him for pretty quickly.
Yeah, but for a second you were so close to a Larry David impression then. Pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. I love doing that because obviously in the UK, unless you're kind of a big comedy fan, a big television fan, Curb isn't that well known in the UK. I cannot tell you how much enjoyment I get from chucking out a pretty Larry David impression and no one knowing what I'm doing.
That's good. Yeah, that is funny.
It's good. It's pretty good. People just looking at me like I've lost my mind. I enjoy it so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I enjoy doing obscure references, and then people just are like, "Why are you talking like that?" Like, why? Yeah. Why did you phrase it like that or use that voice?
Because it works both ways. If they don't know, it's amusing to me. And if they go, "Oh, that's a Larry David impression," I'll be like, "Well, we're going to be best friends forever. Come hither. Talk to me."
Yeah, well, in a weird way, that's kind of how we met, wasn't it? Because I had a Dwight t-shirt on.
Yeah.
I had
And I
Dwight
was
in
very, very
the code
excited.
from the Office T-shirt. That was an immediate like, did we just become best friends? From Step Brothers.
But literally felt like that. It was literally like that.
Yeah, it was really quick. I've only got 2 more notes, and then we get into Trev. But I want your thoughts on have the protocol droid's mind wiped.
Just retconning, isn't it? Just we dug ourselves a hole, let's write ourselves out of it with mind wipes.
But why not the astromech? Why is he wiping C-3PO's mind, but not R2's?
I guess he feels maybe R2 can't communicate stuff as much, but, as proven later, R2 could just flash back.
Because it's weird, because it's like Lucas was like, oh, damn, R2 clearly remembers Obi-Wan in A New Hope, because he talks about his old master. But C-3PO clearly doesn't remember being made by Anakin, living with Padme, all the events of these movies.
I just think we didn't need Anakin to have made C-3PO. That's the main crux of that, isn't it?
Well, it's not just that. It's his presence through all of the other stuff too, because he's there on Mustafar. Like, you know what I mean? He's so involved in huge pivoting moments. And I know that in Lucas's head, he's talked about this before, he kind of has always said, like, oh, these movies are actually like C-3PO and R2's story. They're just like, we're reliving it through their eyes in a lot of ways. Like, that's how he sees it. He's wrong, because the movies don't actually do that. They're largely absent from huge chunks of the 9 movies that we have currently. So, it's not their story. It's very explicitly not their story. But he sees it that way. So he had the choice of, like, I either have to put C-3PO... Sorry. What just happened? Oh, okay, I understand. My wall of the room I'm in is next to the other side of this wall, the next flat. It's their bathroom, and I just heard a squeak, and I was like, "What the hell was that squeak?" But it's the tap. It's them turning off their tap. Sorry, that really it came out of nowhere. It kind of almost jumped me. So Lucas was like, "Oh, they have to be in the movie." He had a choice, right? Either you don't include C-3PO in all the key moments, but then you lose that idea that he quite likes, that C-3PO and R2 are kind of like it's their story in many ways. So then he has to like contrive why C-3PO wouldn't just remember all these people. He traveled to Mustafar with Obi-Wan, like he knows who he is. C-3PO's with Padme, Obi-Wan visits him, he knows Obi-Wan, like he was there for the war. So like, the idea that they have wipe his mind is the only explanation. They try to play it off as like it's comedy. Like, wipe his mind, will you? It zooms in on him, he's like, wah wah.
Oh no.
Wah wah wah. It's one of those, but it's not great. It doesn't work very well, in my opinion. I agree with you. It's pointless. He just wanted to do it because he didn't want to. He didn't want to do the thing he should have done, which is not really include them that much.
Yeah, he wanted the iconography of those characters in there, and it doesn't work, I don't think.
No. Last little note before Triv. CGI to
Although, actually, sorry, I will say sorry. If they weren't in here, though, we'd probably be sat here going, you could have probably fit C-3PO and R2 in here, couldn't you? So,
I think you could have, just not in this way. Like, having C-3PO made by Anakin, live with Padme, have R2 be the astromech that saves Padme when she was queen from her ship getting shot down. Like, they don't need to be that tied to the story. They could have just been present as, R2 didn't need to be Anakin's, droid that goes on his adventures with him. It could have been anyone. Obi-Wan has R4. Give Anakin his own one. And have R2 be a smaller part. Like, when they go back to Coruscant, it's clear he's, there. Like, he's in the background or whatever. Like, you can include them without making them so close to the events of the movies that you can't fathom how they wouldn't possibly remember. Although it's clear R2 does remember, and R2 goes into the next trilogy with all that knowledge, which is why he goes to get that information to Obi-Wan quite so vehemently. And why C-3PO bitches and moans the whole time, because he doesn't remember that. Speaking of Tatooine, though, CGI Tunisia sucks balls. It's a real shame they couldn't use the shot they actually did. So for those who don't know and didn't listen to our last one, when they were in Tunisia shooting the Tatooine stuff for Attack of the Clones, George shot a scene where Obi-Wan, but it was a stand-in because Ewan McGregor didn't come to Tunisia. Because obviously Obi-Wan never arrives on Tatooine in the second movie, so he wasn't on set for that. Why would you fly him out? You wouldn't, not for one shot. But he got a shot where a guy in a cloak that was Obi-Wan-esque handed the baby to Owen Lars, and then they looked off to do the sunset. You know, the twin suns. You know, the whole Star Wars thing. But what happened was he got that shot, and someone said, "What if the needs of the movie changes?" And and he goes, "Well, I don't have the shot. Then I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back to Tunisia." Basically, so what happened was Lucas watched the footage and realized there was two problems. One, it's not great that it's a stand-in for Obi-Wan. It'd be nice to see his face, but two, he wanted Obi-Wan to hand the baby to Beru, not Owen. I'm not sure why that matters, personally. I definitely wouldn't have come away going, he should have handed it to the other one. Either way around, it literally doesn't bother me, personally, but sure. And that means they couldn't use the shot they shot in Tunisia, so instead they did it on a green screen soundstage and CGI'd Tunisia around it, maybe using some reference footage. I don't know, but it looks like shit. And it's the big final moment of the movie. The binary sunset music plays as Owen and Beru look off into the sun in the exact same framing as when Luke looks off into that in A New Hope. As a concept, that is brilliant. In execution, it looks like shit. It's
because the notion of the reminder of no matter how dark this movie has ended, there is still hope, and it is Luke. Yeah. That sort of that is genius. It's fantastic. Yeah.
He is A New Hope. Oh, that was the next movie called? Oh, New Hope. Great. Yeah, cool. He's the main character. Like, it's fine. It's a great dovetail as a choice for a shot to go in the end of this movie. What an absolute shame they had to make the change or use the CG version, because it looks real bad. It's very distracting. Cool. Are we ready to triv it up, Chris?
Let's triv it up!
I'm going to give you some trivia. Oh, did we do like general overall thoughts? Do we recommend? I don't recommend any of these movies, really. I don't think any of them are good enough to really. If you've never seen them, just watch the sequels. Just watch the original trilogy. Don't worry about these three. I think you'd be fine without them.
I think that applies
to.
But
if you're a big Star Wars fan, you've already seen these.
Yeah.
So that is the other issue.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, I suppose if that's the caveat, you're not a big Star Wars fan to have not seen them. Should you check them out? No.
And I guess if you're a big Star Wars fan that's not seen them in a while, are they worth rewatching? I think also no.
No, and I don't think the stuff. Well, here's a question for you though, Dan.
Yeah.
The Clone Wars is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, for the sake of I don't think Obi-Wan Kenobi is good enough to justify watching these movies. Is the Clone Wars good enough to justify watching these movies?
It's really good. When it gets good, it gets really good. It starts wobbly, but it really becomes amazing. Yeah. Oh God. Maybe. I don't know the exact answer. Is it worth sitting through? Because it's already a tough ask to get someone into the Clone Wars. Because I don't mind the movie they made, the pilot movie. It's fine and fun and frivolous. But it doesn't get to the really nitty gritty stuff that really, expands on the world and makes things like really interesting and a lot better and explores some really interesting ideas. That doesn't start to happen until the show gets a little way in. So essentially what I'd be asking someone to do, if they've seen the original trilogy, is go, okay, watch these 3 movies. They're not great. Then sit through the first season of the Clone Wars, which is spotty, to get to where it gets good in its second season. Actually, no, I'm asking them to watch 4 movies and a season of a TV show to then get to the good stuff. And I just don't think I could justify ever asking someone that. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I don't recommend anyone digs back into these. I don't think it's worth it.
Fair enough. There you go.
I don't think they work on the rewatch. They didn't really work on the original watch when I was a kid. No, thank you.
Fair. That's your answer.
So now we will actually triv it up. Do you want to do the thing again? Now we're going back into triv.
Let's triv it up.
I'm gonna give you some trivia. So you'll be so sad about this, Chris. We'll release the Lucas cut. The original cut of this movie ran nearly 4 hours long. You want to watch that?
I don't know, man. I would because what went, and if you think about the structure of this movie, it would be better fleshed out and played as a TV show. Yeah, I would see the 4 hour cut. I really would.
Yeah. So apparently the opening battle and the Palpatine rescue alone ran for about an hour in the original cut.
I'm out then. No, forget that. I don't need an hour of that. Never mind.
Yeah, because in this movie it's about 25 minutes, 23 minutes. They land. They land the ship at 23 minutes.
You hear the thing about that is right.
Yeah.
You hear an hour and 45 or whatever it's around that. This movie, an hour and 45 to 4 hours, and you go, oh well, whole storylines and scenes must have been cut. That's why I want to see that, because I want to see the TV show version with the added scenes.
This movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long. By the way, I think it's interesting you thought it was an hour and 45 because I felt every minute of that 2 hours and 20 minutes, and clearly you had a breezy time.
No, it's because we watched the Marvels yesterday as well, and that is an hour and 45. So I knew we. But paused a movie at some point, and it was an hour and 45.
Can I ask the question everyone is now thinking, Chris? It's the better movie, right?
Which is the better movie?
Oh, it's the Marvels, right? It's the Marvels. I think it's the Marvels.
And don't get me wrong, I was harsher with there was mini the Marvels review. I went into the Marvels knowing you really liked it, and it's a lot of fun and and I at the beginning of the movie, for the first hour or whatever, I wasn't necessarily with you. Spoilers for the Marvels coming up, by the way. Absolute spoilers for the Marvel. Because the beginning is so, when they're first introducing the swapping and stuff, it's so unclear and we don't see them swap back. And I'm just watching this movie going, and there's forcing in the clips of the last movie, and I'm just watching this movie going, this is clearly a victim. I know what the fault is. It seems to be a victim of meddling reshoots and over edited and stuff, and I'm like, there's a better version of this movie in here somewhere, and I'm not particularly on board. And then they start the musical number, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? What is going on here? This is mad. And then the cats eat the team to get them safely to ground, and I'm like, you know what, I'm in.
It's a movie that has to earn your trust to just go with it, but when it does, it's glorious. It's so much fun, that movie. It is a switch your brain off movie, but it's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, so the Marvels, I had a better time watching the Marvels, but I was more emotionally engaged with the last hour of this movie. So you hear 2 hours to 4 hours, and in my head I'm like, okay, well, scenes and storylines must have been cut out, so maybe there's more Palpatine and Anakin. Maybe there's more Anakin and Padme. Maybe there's more of this. Maybe we do see some of these criticisms. Maybe they are expanded on in an extended cut. And then you hear that the first battle is an hour long, and you go, oh no, it's literally just an extended version of what we've seen. It's not like anything got cut. It's just literally what we've seen, but the scenes are longer, in which case, fuck that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when I see pieces of trivia like this, because I think 90% of movies that get made, the initial assembly cut is always crazy long, and then they get it down to the essentials. A lot of movies, they say the final version, the final draft of the movie being written is the edit. That's when you really have to go what stays, what goes. Now we've got it all together. So it wouldn't surprise me if that 4 hour cut was that was never going to go in front of anyone's eyes. The same way that the Snyder cut we got on HBO Max wasn't the cut that was going to ever be released in cinemas. We talked about that at the time. But anyway, because at cinemas it would have been chopped down to 2 or 3 hours. It would have been more concise instead of the rambly mess we ended up with. The original cut.
Also, and I know we've said it a lot, but also they fucking shot new footage and new scenes for it, so no one can go, "That's what we should have got," because that's not what we would have got by virtue of that alone.
100%. Some of the extra footage from the Palpatine rescue scene did find its way into one of the video games of the movie. However, I don't recall that, but yeah, I believe that that's true. Sure. Why not? After principal photography was completed in 2003, George Lucas wanted to make even more changes to Anakin's character, sharpening his motivations for turning to the dark side. Lucas accomplished this after production with a rewrite through editing the principal footage and filming new scenes and pickups in London in 2004. In the previous versions, Anakin had a myriad of reasons for turning to the dark side, one of which was his sincere belief that the Jedi were plotting to take over the Republic. This is still intact in the finished movie, but is revised with new scenes, emphasizing Anakin's desire to save Padme from death. Thus, in the version that made it to theaters, Anakin falls to the dark side primarily to save Padme. That was a late addition, and Lucas got that very fucking wrong.
Yeah, agreed.
Simple. Very, very wrong. Would have been so much clearer if he just stuck to his original plan. Or completely gone to the other one, but you can't do that because that's reshoots. You can only change so much. And actually, that really goes a long way to explaining why his arc is so muddled, because what's happened is he's bolted another arc on top of the arc he'd already shot. And that kind of explains why it's like this movie of two versions of that story that are competing with each other, because one is the original thing they shot and one is a thing he tried to add later on and fit into what had already been shot. And that is how you end up with a movie that feels like this one does. Terrible. Bad choice.
Absolutely.
Bad choice. George Lucas deliberately made Darth Vader's suit top heavy, and added weight to the helmet so that Hayden Christensen would not appear too accustomed to moving in it in the movie. That's cool. The other interesting thing is that Hayden Christensen was at one point not actually going to be getting in the costume. Yeah, so Hayden was dismayed as this movie started production to discover there was no plan for him to don the iconic suit. Vader and his original performer David Prowse was 6'6". Hayden Christensen was only 6 foot, and they were worried that wouldn't tally. The whole reason we do Hayden being brutally chopped off at the legs and the arms is so that we can believe that the robot legs that then get attached to Vader give him that extra height that he was missing, because obviously no human other than like someone like David Prowse is 6'6".
Right.
So that's why they chose to do that, which, by the way, we haven't really talked about this. It is brutal. I do like that they went full on with the visualizing of his injuries. And like, one thing I will say is a lot of people envisioned him falling into lava. I like him having the limbs chopped off and then just burning, like the way they do it in this movie. It's visualized quite powerfully. I think it works. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, for sure.
So Hayden was dismayed
I thought that was great.
To do that. That was going to be the plan. He wasn't getting in the costume. They were going to bring in a 6'6" guy to be Vader, and eventually convinced Lucas to let him do it. And they built a special version of the suit that had actually like almost like essentially like platform things built into the legs and the arms to extend the limbs to give him the correct proportions and height. So the suit he was in, his feet were not touching the ground, but he got to do it. He finally got to be Vader, and I think he earned that. He can't have been on this journey and not get to wear the suit at the end. I agree with.
Yeah, that would have been mad. That would have been mad.
Yeah, I understand why you do want an actor that's the right height. That's the idea. You're maintaining the realism, or not realism, but like the sort of believability of that. But I honestly, I wouldn't have even minded if he was a bit shorter. Like, I literally don't care. Like, just let Hayden put the fucking suit on. A 10-year-old Han Solo was due to appear during the Battle of Kashyyyk. We talked about this already, but the plan was for him to be an orphan being raised by Chewbacca, and he would have helped them find General Grievous by finding a transmitter droid that was sending signals from Utapu to Kashyyyk, and that would have allowed Obi-Wan to locate the villain. Bad idea. Glad it didn't make it into the movie.
Yeah, agreed.
Ewan and Hayden prepared for 2 months in fencing and fitness to do their epic battle. As a result of their extreme practice, the speed at which Kenobi and Vader engage in a duel in the completed movie is the exact speed it was filmed at. It is not digitally accelerated at all, and it is it is incredible. There's a lot of power and speed behind everything they do. It's really cool. Let's see. Oh, so apparently they went out and shot some footage of a real volcano in Italy erupting, because it was erupting during the production. So they sent out a couple of crew guys with the cameras to get that, and then somehow implemented that into the CGI mess. What the real shame is, there's so much CGI, you don't see it. It's lost in the glut, which is a shame.
Yeah, that doesn't come across. I would never have guessed they'd gone to that effort.
No, neither would I. There's more trivia here than I remembered picking out, but okay, we'll keep blasting through. George Lucas cameo. There's a blue-skinned Panodia, which I guess is a species, who appears just outside the entrance to Palpatine's private box at the Opera House. That's George Lucas. His son, Jet Lucas, is in the movie. He's the young Jedi that rushes from the temple while Bail Organa's speeder escape is happening. That's fun. I'm for fun little cameos like that. That's no problem. Ewan McGregor apparently provided Lucasfilm provided Ewan McGregor with a looped film reel of Alec Guinness's scenes from the original Star Wars trilogy, so he could study them and perfect both the accent and pacing of the words to sort of complete. Like, he is more Alec Guinnessy in this movie than the previous ones. That's by design. That's like he became that way over the movies.
Fair play.
Yeah, works well. In the opening sequence, the second separatist ship is destroyed. If you look carefully, a piece of debris that flies into the clone Star Destroyer flies off, and that piece of debris is apparently, if you look carefully, an actual kitchen sink. It was put there by ILM as a joke, because obviously the saying is we throw everything into the sequence, including the kitchen sink.
I respect that a lot.
Me too. Me too. The Wookiee costumes evolved a lot in the time between the original trilogy and now. They sported a new arterial system that pumped ice-cold water around the interior, which kept the actors at a good temperature while they performed, which I think is good. Comfort of the actors is important. And this marks Peter Mayhew's first return to the big screen since Return of the Jedi, as he revives his role of Chewbacca. The only piece of work he'd done, weirdly, between Return of the Jedi in 1983 and this movie, was he did a small voice role in Dragon Ball GT: A Hero's Legacy, which is a TV made-for-television movie from 1997. Weird that he ended up doing that, but fine.
Yeah, fair play.
I mean, it's just so strange to do nothing between the two movies, but that one thing. Usually it's like you either retire from acting altogether, or you're regularly doing bits and bobs. He just did one thing between the two movies, and it was a small voice role in a Dragon Ball GT movie. Strange. I'm glad he did it. I'm sure they paid him very well for it, and I'm sure his work is excellent. It was just I found that very strange, but yeah. Oh, here we go. So this is interesting. So, in this movie, Darth Sidious implies that if you're powerful enough in the dark side of the Force, you can even go as far as to create life. This has actually led to a popular theory that Anakin was... Because they said Anakin was maybe conceived by the Force in an earlier movie, in Phantom Menace. Some people wondered if Palpatine had been involved in his creation. That was true in an early draft of the screenplay. The point was made very clearly. Sidious says to Anakin, "I arranged for your conception. You could almost think of me as your father." This idea was dropped in later drafts because there was a feeling that it was too similar to the Luke reveal from Empire Strikes Back. Because that's Palpatine basically saying he is responsible. He's basically Anakin's father, is what he's essentially saying there. So we had the implication from episode 1 was left in, but the reveal was removed. I'm glad. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, but equally, I think there's still enough in there for you to put that. Like, when watching that scene, I wondered about that. So I think there's a good balance there, where there's enough to defer if you wanted to.
Yeah. I'm all for leaving it to the audience with stuff like that, but my headcanon is that is nonsense. I like the idea more that the Force sort of led to him existing so that he could bring balance to the Force, because that makes the most sense to my brain. But if you want to believe that Anakin is weirdly Palpatine's child, then go ahead. He can be sister. He can be brother to Rey. Sure. Oh yeah, no. They would be brother. Would he be? He'd be your uncle. Have I got that right? Great uncle, something like that. I don't know. I've lost track. Anyway, in the duel with Count Dooku, the imprisoned Palpatine originally had a lot more dialogue that he was to shout at Anakin. One of the lines was the one we talked about last week, where the plan was to reveal that Count Dooku had actually arranged for the Tusken Raiders to kidnap, torture, and kill Shmi Skywalker. That was obviously removed. Maybe that's what's part of that hour of, that was part of the extra hour of extended scene at the beginning.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Liam Neeson actually recorded a cameo as Qui-Gon Jinn for this movie. He was to feature in a scene with Yoda. Go on.
Well, I mean, right. It almost to the point, Dan, actually. I know we don't usually do this, and apologies if it's worked for you and you have to cut around this. But go to Disney Plus, go to Extras, as I did yesterday, and watch that scene. Because it's in there, and if they got Liam Neeson to perform it, they didn't then overdub it on the deleted scene, as far as I can see. Because the voice that is featured to me, because I was going to see if this came up and be like, did Liam Neeson record it? Because it fucking doesn't sound like Liam Neeson in what's on Disney Plus.
I'm fascinated. I'm pulling it up. Because there is have you seen the? We'll get to that because there's another piece of extra media from this movie that's mind melting. It's very funny. I'll tell you about that.
No, I only watched the Qui-Gon Jinn thing.
Where am I at? So I'm in there now. Revenge. Come on. Revenge of the Sith. I reckon I will have seen this scene in my youth.
Oh yeah, probably.
Because I explored every inch of these DVDs because I was a bored child. Oh yeah, Yoda communes with Qui-Gon. Here it is. So is it just Yoda and a voice?
Yeah, pretty much. No, the other Leia's adopted father comes in at the end. Can't remember his name.
Yeah. Bail Organa. Oh yeah, so there's Yoda. He's sat meditating. I can't hear it, but I'm assuming he's hearing Qui-Gon's voice come through. Is that right?
Oh yeah, you got to hear it a bit because I just don't think it's Liam Neeson.
Really? Let's have it.
Your physical self will fade away.
No, that is not Liam Neeson.
Still retain your
So,
that's 100% not Liam Neeson.
If Liam Neeson recorded it, why did they not use that audio for this?
Oh, that is mind melting. That's definitely not Liam Neeson. That is 100% someone else.
Weird, right?
So the way this trivia is phrased, I've just double checked it. Liam Neeson has said that he recorded a cameo as Qui-Gon Jinn. So that information comes from Liam Neeson. But he probably did then, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
They had that footage somewhere and just didn't use it.
Which is really weird to me.
It was to further... Let's see if this trivia expands on this at all, because I don't remember even copying this one over. Further explaining the concept of Jedi communicating from beyond the grave. In the script, Qui-Gon Jinn is heard but not seen while Yoda is meditating just before Bail Organa informs him of Obi-Wan's return with Padme. The scene does not appear... Oh, interesting. This scene does not appear in the deleted scenes section of the original DVD. However, an unfinished version was included in a later Blu-ray box set, so I won't have seen this scene as a kid. Fascinating. I don't know how we didn't end up using Qui-Gon's actual voice because we recorded it. That's weird.
Yeah, that's really weird to me. Really weird.
So apparently, in an original or early version of the script/film, Anakin was supposed to be in the room when Palpatine was killing all the other Jedi, watching. And he was apparently... Jeez. It was actually Anakin's lightsaber he was going to grab to do it. The entire fight would have had Anakin debating on which side to choose. They even filmed this, but figured out that Anakin simply watching the fight meant he had already made his choice. So the whole thing was reshot for Anakin not to be present for that moment. Further, the final fight between Windu and Palpatine was supposed to be an all-over-the-place battle masterpiece, but due to George Lucas wanting Ian McDiarmid to do as many of his own stunts as possible, it was reduced largely to Windu forcing Palpatine down the hallway, and then a bit of a scrap in the office before Anakin shows up. Yeah, you can tell Ian McDiarmid is limited. So apparently the thinking was that they didn't want Anakin to have sort of like been present and not done anything, because that doesn't do his character any favors, which is fair.
Yeah, I mean, Anakin kills children later, so I'm not sure, protecting his character is top of their list.
I know, but I guess in that moment, that's when you're still in the will he, won't he phase. Although he will, he's Darth Vader.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's weird actually to think about that. The movie does kind of play it as, oh, will he go to the dark side? Even though you definitely know. And also, I will say this: a huge amount of the marketing for this movie was around Darth Vader. A huge amount of he was on the poster, he was on merch. It was Darth Vader was literally his breathing undercut the trailers. Like it was Darth Vader mania. And then I saw the movie and was like, he's in like 8 seconds of the movie. And he goes, no! It's such a weird marketing campaign.
I didn't remember. I was really surprised when he doesn't say anything again. Like in the scene later on with the Death Star, I was like, oh, they just, it was a bit Kylie in the last episode of Neighbours. Just didn't say much either.
Yeah, bizarre. I didn't know Kylie had shown up in the last episode of Neighbours. That's exciting.
You what? Sorry,
I'm learning that information about Kylie appearing in the last episode of Neighbours as we're speaking.
Oh, you got to watch. It's amazing. It's like she had a deal where she went, okay, but you're going to pay me by the word. So they went, all right, just don't say anything then.
Incredible.
It's mad. It's such a mad scene. I'm desperate. I've been holding it in, Dan, but I'm desperate to pee, so I'm just going to nip and do that while you talk. I apologise.
Sure. Yeah, do it. I also need to pee, but I have to do the triv, so I don't have the luxury. We'll power through. Well,
I can. Well, do you want to? Well, should we take a momentary pause and pee?
Can we do that? I guess we can. All right, listeners. You're going to hear a beep in a second, and when you hear the beep, we'll be back and we'll be doing more trivia. More trivia with Chris and Dan. Welcome back to a very much more relieved Dan and Chris. I will say, though, I'm worried we've done something bad here because, historically, Chris, when we've had a long podcast and we want to get out, needing the toilet has helped us stay focused. And I'm worried that now we've done that, we're just going to be like, fuck it. Let's not do that.
There is the danger.
Let's try and power through anyway, as if that we are being focused and respecting the listeners' time. Which is a laughable thought because we never do that. Sorry, everyone. We're terrible. Bad podcasters. Anyway, Order 66 was originally going to be much more violent and upsetting. It featured the entirety of the Jedi Temple massacre. This is probably also part of that original 4-hour cut, so I think this confirms your theory that 4-hour cut wasn't adding new stuff, but just all of the stuff that was there was longer. George Lucas apparently cut those scenes out because he was worried they were bad enough that he'd get an R rating. Jesus.
God. Wow.
Yeah. And we are now getting to another weird retcon thing, right? And I was saving it because I knew it came up in the trivia from the main conversation, but I want your thoughts on this. So, in early drafts of the script, Padme was scheduled to survive her confrontation with Vader and gone into hiding with the infant Leia on Alderaan. The reason for this is because in the original trilogy, Leia has recollections of her mother in Return of the Jedi. But Lucas deemed that problematic because Padme's death would then have had to have occurred in the intervening years, and it's like a character died off screen. He wasn't sure he liked that either. It felt, that her story kind of is unresolved. She went into hiding and that was that. It doesn't feel very final. So he opted in later drafts to have Padme die, well, it says here as a result of her injuries from confronting Vader, but we know she died of a broken heart. The movie says that. And he felt that her death and funeral was a more satisfying end for that character, even if it creates problems with continuity. So how do you feel about that? He made the right call, the wrong call?
No, I think he made the right call, to be honest with you. I think it's easier to go, Leia's memory was confused, or she invented something in her head. She created something in her head because that's what she wanted to remember and wanted to feel. That's easier than someone dying off screen and that being a bit confused.
Yeah. I think for me, I always try to go on.
I think he's right. I think that is the more what feels more correct as an ending for her.
Mm. Yeah, and I agree it's the right ending for Padme, but I do think you've kind of written yourself into a corner, and there's a certain amount of honouring that. Although I will say, you can fansplain, I think, Leia by saying it's a Force thing. She remembers her mother because her mother's spirit lives on in the Force, and she's dreamed of her and interacted with her through the Force. Because obviously Leia, we eventually learn, is Force sensitive also. So, it's... Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird they didn't retcon that in Obi-Wan, isn't it? It's weird that they didn't have maybe Leia reference, sleeping and hearing her mother's laugh or something like that.
Yeah, because I think in the original movie she says she's very beautiful and she was very kind but sad, which is an accurate description of Padme. Beautiful and kind but sad because she's married to an absolute monster. a monster that really hates sand. I don't know. I've got mixed feelings on that myself because I would rather that it was cleaner from a continuity perspective, but I also understand why we didn't do that. So yeah. Anyway, that's as much as I have to say on that. But apparently, another thing they had in the original movie that they took out was they had a short clip of Yoda arriving on Dagobah for his exile. They filmed it and produced it, but it wasn't in the final movie because basically, according to producer Rick McCallum, he liked the shot and was basically begging Lucas to keep it in the movie. But Lucas, when he looked at the whole movie, thought that the epilogue really needed to focus on the members of the Skywalker family, which it obviously does. It focuses on Padme's funeral, Anakin's journey into Vader, and Luke and Leia being delivered to their, to where they end up, and throwing a random shot of Yoda landing on Dagobah doesn't really we know where he's going when he says he's going into exile. Do we need to physically see it? I kind of agree with Lucas on that one. I don't know. How do you feel?
I'd have liked to have seen it, but I think that makes sense. I think, it would have been a cool shot, but I don't think it would have added enough that it would have been, it should have been there. Do you know what I mean? And actually, I think it makes it more flexible. Like, I almost like the idea that he didn't exile himself there right away. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Dagobah is kind of, Dagobah is where he ends up eventually, but like maybe he tries a few different places first and moves around a bit. Yeah, I agree. This won't shock anyone, but every single clone trooper in this film is completely CGI. They didn't make a single clone costume or helmet. In the last movie, there were a couple of helmets produced, physical helmets for people to wear, and some boots, I think, so they could do shots of the feet landing. But in this, zero. That doesn't shock me. And it looks terrible. So, good work.
It's awful.
This is one of those things that I'm including because everyone knows this, but I'm saying it anyway. The subtitle Revenge of the Sith is obviously a play on famously the original title for Return of the Jedi, which was Revenge of the Jedi, which got changed because George Lucas was like, oh, the Jedi wouldn't like revenge, but of course the Sith would, so Revenge of the Sith became the title for this one. It's nice, it works, but it's like, I'm including it in the trivia just so I don't get the comments. I can't believe you didn't talk about that. We don't get those too much because I do these. But I know if I didn't include that, like in the early days of Rewind Reviews, there'd be obvious trivia that everyone knows that I wouldn't mention, and then it's like, oh, did you not notice? Did you not notice it's Twin Pines Mall and then it's Lone Pines Mall? Yeah, I noticed. We all noticed. Apparently, C-3PO in this movie was a bit of a nightmare because there were a huge number of completely green screen sets, and they reflected heavily off the C-3PO gold armor. So digital effect artists had to go in post-production and digitally repaint every frame by frame, every image of C-3PO to remove traces of the green of the set being reflected back on him. Those poor artists suffering for George Lucas's absolute insistence on all of the green screen.
Yeah, that's bad, isn't it? You just feel for them.
Yeah.
Like, and it must have been so hard back in the day, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interestingly, this is actually the only movie in the entire franchise that C-3PO is in his complete golden armor. In episode 1, no coverings at all. Episode 2, he has like the silver coverings. In the original trilogy, he's mostly gold, but his leg is silver. The brief cameo of him in Rogue One is the same. His leg is still silver. In The Force Awakens, he randomly has a red arm. And through that trilogy. So yeah, the only time we see C-3PO with full golden armor, top to bottom, is this movie.
That's crazy.
I mean, it says I just realised it says armor here, but obviously it's not armor, is it? It's just his casing, or whatever you want to call it. Armor's a strong word for what C-3PO is made out of. But yeah, this is the only movie where he's gold, top to bottom.
Shit, that's blowing my mind. I would not have guessed that.
Yeah, no, neither would I. Because obviously the real tricky one, the reason you don't think that's potentially true is because obviously in the original trilogy, the silver leg is a bit subtle. So yeah, there you go. The thing I'm just double checking actually, because sometimes you get caught out with these bits of trivia. Because this mentions in Force Awakens he has the red arm, but it has occurred to me, was this trivia written pre-Jedi and...
But also, what about Empire then in Return?
Yeah, silver leg.
All right, wow.
Yeah. The only thing I'm thinking that might change this now is I'm not certain he still has the red arm in... He has it in Force Awakens. Does he still have the red arm in, like, Rise of Skywalker? Because that would null this trivia. This trivia might have been written just after Force Awakens had come out, rather than...
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this might actually no longer be true. Because I have got a shot here, unless he's got the silver leg again. That would be hilarious. I can't see. So I've got a shot from Rise of Skywalker where he no longer has the red arm. So unless he goes back to the silver leg, then maybe he's complete in Rise of Skywalker 2, and this trivia was written before that movie came out. Maybe. We'll never know, because I won't look it up.
But I think we're okay not knowing. That's fine.
Yeah, and the chances of me watching sitting through Rise of Skywalker again are slim to none. That's all I'm saying. Right, let's power through the rest of this. So you'll be shocked almost to hear, Chris, that there are 2,200 visual effects shots in this movie, which is more than Episode 1 and 2 combined.
Wow, jeez. That is surprising, because I would have thought that would be Episode 2.
Yeah, so 2,200 visual effect shots. Do you want to know how many visual effect shots were in A New Hope?
Go for it.
310.
And this will shock you guys. Hot take, I think it's a better movie.
Yep. And even if we're just going, even if we're taking like script, acting, music, all off the table, we're just going visually, it's a better movie.
Yeah. For sure.
The original trilogies hold up visually really well. And actually, the changes Lucas has made over the years have hurt them more than helped them.
For sure. Absolutely.
It's unknown if this ended up happening, but apparently Ewan McGregor begged to play one of the red-robed Imperial Guards. I like to think he's one of the ones that Yoda smashes into the wall. It's just my... So, this is just typical Lucas realizing stuff far too late, because he probably wrote the script about 2 months before they started shooting. But the scene where Palpatine tells Anakin about Darth Plagueis the Wise was originally going to be in Palpatine's office, but then Lucas realized the characters had spent lots of scenes talking in Palpatine's office, so he changed it last minute to the opera box. According to the production designer, Gavin Bucket, the change was made very last minute. George suddenly invented an opera scene, so we needed a theatre box, and we had literally a day. So we took 3 of the chairs out of Palpatine's red office, did a quick repaint job, changed the back, added fabric, all the things that we could do in it, like in 4 hours. Eventually, even in the world of multi-million-dollar filmmaking, Although we did all the things we could do, even in the world of multi-audio filmmaking. Thanks to the early days of dressings, green blees, and old aircraft parts, George loves the idea that if you stick a few things on and paint them silver with care and attention, they'll still look great. Cool. Yeah. Get a handle on shit, George. Plan stuff out. Write the script earlier. Decide this stuff earlier. Don't be changing this shit on the fly.
That's sort of the executive summary of these last 3 podcasts. Get a handle on shit, George.
Yeah, because I think it's like one of those things where George, in these movies, George Lucas is literally the definition of we'll fix it in post.
Or to be fair, stick to your guns, George. As we talked about right up top with The Phantom Menace, stick to your guns. Find another director and another writer. Just refuse to do it unless they're going to allow you the time to do that.
He didn't want to make these movies, it's true. He wanted them to be made, but he didn't want to be the guy to helm them. And everyone was like, nope, that's your thing. So Samuel L. Jackson apparently knew that he was likely to die in this movie because he sort of, like, you know, his Mace Windu is not in the sequels to these, or the prequels, no, the original trilogy, you know what I mean? So he apparently told George Lucas he would only do this one if Mace Windu goes out in a blaze of glory and not like some sucker.
Nice.
He's apparently referred to it on multiple late night shows. At one point, he said he didn't want to go out like some punk.
I don't think he did go out like a punk.
No, I think he went out. It's a pretty meaningful death, I'd say.
Yeah, and also what he gets him to do, because Mace Windu has not been a main character in these movies by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So, you know, I imagine Samuel L. Jackson gets this script and he's like, I'm the one that makes Palpatine, you know, that creates that iconic look for Palpatine. Yeah, that'll do. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I agree thoroughly. During Anakin's transformation to Darth Vader, this is just a cool detail that I noticed in the trailer, and I was like, yeah, we'll talk about that. Apparently, you can hear Anakin's heartbeat in the background until the second the helmet goes on. The heartbeat stops, showing Anakin has died and Vader is born. That's cool. Good work, whoever thought of that and executed that. Really neat. It's a detail cooler than this movie deserves, but I like that it's there. According to Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar, there was a deleted scene before Palpatine crowned himself as Emperor, where he mockingly thanked Jar Jar Binks for granting him the emergency powers that allowed him to take over the galaxy in the first place. I actually wish that scene was still in the movie. I think that's fun.
Yeah, because I don't like the sort of almost token Jar Jar appearance at the funeral. Kind of that felt like Lucas was doing a bit of a, like, either don't have him in or have him in, and I think that would have been a fun reference of, like, having him in, like, overtly referenced and thanked, and also justifying the position slightly. Yeah. I'd have liked that too.
Yeah, I think that's better than not doing him, or doing him as we did in this movie, which is like he appears but never speaks. Apparently, it was Hayden Christensen who suggested Anakin having the red and yellow Sith eyes, the same red and yellow eyes that Darth Maul and Palpatine have, and to make the transition from Jedi to Sith sort of complete. Lucas initially disagreed, reasoning that Count Dooku didn't have the Sith eyes, but Christensen believed the idea was like solid and pushed a few times. But as the movie got made, he figured he'd been like Lucas wasn't doing it, but apparently Lucas decided after the fact to add it, and did eventually do it. I personally don't like it, but because I think in a world where you're doing Palpatine getting his sort of grizzled looks from the lightning incident, then the eyes can't be Sith powers. I don't think. You know what I mean? It's one or the other. Either being a Jedi, being a Sith changes the way you look physically, or it doesn't. I'm confused as to why you would do one step and not the other step, but sure, it's fine.
Yeah, agreed.
It's a menacing visual when he turns around and his eyes are all messed up. Like, I get it, but yeah.
Yeah, it is menacing, but yeah.
Now, this is one of my favourite things, right? You know, remember I told you, Chris, that I thoroughly explored the DVDs for these movies? This is something you're going to absolutely Google when you finish this podcast. And you might even better look at it while we're talking if you've got your laptop in front of you. The DVD version of this movie, on the options menu, if you press a bunch of numbers, so it's like 11, enter, 3, enter, 8, enter, so 1138, THX 1138, the Lucas related number. A video would play of Yoda dancing to hip hop music with stormtroopers or so clone troopers behind him, sort of nodding and like with their arms crossed, like they're like beatboxing along with it or whatever. They're not. There's music playing. It's insane. It's one of my favorite things. It's only like it's less than a minute long. It's such a great visual.
Looking it up right now.
I don't know who decided to animate this and hide it on the DVD, but I love you. Wherever you are, whoever you are, I love you.
Getting it up.
While you're Googling that, Chris, would you like to have a guess at the number of screen wipes are in this movie? Because you complained in the last movie that there were too many wipes. This movie likes wipes also. Are you laughing at Yoda dancing?
Yeah, it's fucking brilliant.
It's so good.
He's really going for it.
It's great.
Amazing.
It's so good.
Yes, I did complain about
my
the
life.
screen wipes.
My life is better knowing that Yoda footage exists.
Yeah, oh, for sure. For sure. Screen wipes, go for it.
Yeah, so do you want to guess how many were in this movie, or do you want me to just tell you?
Ah, no, just tell me.
40. It's a lot.
40?
40 is a lot. 40 is more than I thought that were.
It's too many. It's undeniable.
Shall I look up how many wipes were used in New Hope? Because my defense when you complained in the last movie was, I was like, they did it in the originals. I think it's like an aesthetic thing. You sort of stuck with it. How many wipes in New Hope? Let's see. Let's see if Google has the answer. Every wipe transition. Well, there's a video where they've done them. They've put them together. But that I want the number.
God, I don't want to see that.
Apparently, The Last Jedi used 12, which is the least in the trilogy. Oh, here we go. I've got all the numbers. Oh, perfect. So, wait a second. That 40 number might be in contention here. Jesus. Okay, it might be worse than we thought, Chris. So, the numbers: Phantom Menace 57. Attack of the Clones, 43. Revenge of
I believe, can I just say, I believe it was Phantom Menace when I complained about it. So.
Right, okay. Yeah, fine. Yeah. I don't remember which one it was, but yeah, I'm with you on that. That's fine. I don't remember. Revenge of the Sith? If this is accurate, 102 according to this. This thing that I found. A New Hope, 50. Empire Strikes Back, 42. Return of the Jedi, 33. Force Awakens, 19. Last Jedi, 12. Oh, these are in... Why are they in the... Oh, we don't have... we're missing one, aren't we? We're missing... This was obviously before Rise of Skywalker came out.
I reckon they would have toned it down in those, though.
So I would argue, so in A New Hope it's 50 and Empire Strikes Back it's 42. I think Phantom Menace at 57 and Attack of the Clones at 43. I think those are fine. That is within range of the original trilogy's numbers. 102 for Revenge of the Sith, however, is far too fucking many.
Yeah, it's mad.
That's outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous. Well, there you go. So I don't know where I got this trivia that there were only 40 from, or 50, whatever the original number was. I said that's I think that's inaccurate because the article I found was from Slash Film. Slash Film counted them up, and I trust Slash Film over random IMDb trivia submitter. Bail Organa's ship at the end when he jumps in the ship and he drives away. If you thought that seemed visually a bit different from everything else, yeah. No green screen was used in that scene. That was a real ship in a real set. Don't know why that one got done for real, but it did. All right, we got two more little things to cover. We got box office, and then we got Cars Exist. So let's do this. So this is the second highest grossing movie of 2005. Do you want to have a guess what movie outpaced it, Chris? So the
2005.
So the last one got beat by Spider-Man. What are we guessing in 2005? No wrong answers. Well, I mean, no, there are lots of wrong answers, but there are no embarrassing answers. You can feel free to take a guess. No one would judge you for getting it wrong.
Spider-Man 2.
It's a reasonable guess.
Or
Go on.
wait,
Oh,
is this around
you might have it.
Harry Potter time?
Year in the region. Which one? Do we want to have a guess? 2005?
2005. Okay, let me try and just very quickly. How old would I have been in 2005? So I'd have been... Ooh, I'd have been that old. I reckon it's too late. Goblet of Fire.
That is correct. Well done.
Boom!
Yeah. So the way to work it out,
Right.
once you landed on Harry Potter, was just to try and remember what year the first Philosopher's Stone came out, because then you can just count. Because 2001,
I couldn't remember that.
2001 Philosopher's Stone. So then it's 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the fourth movie. There you go. You did it though. Nailed it.
Oh, I did it by how old was I and what do I think came out around then. But yeah, I didn't even remember they were what a year, to be honest. Fair enough.
They were at the beginning. I don't think they were at the end, but they were at the beginning. It had a really good opening weekend. It grossed 108 million domestically, so just in the States, which is actually the one of the biggest weekends in history. In fact, at the time, it was the second highest grossing opening weekend in history, behind, ironically, Spider-Man in 2002, which had pipped Attack of the Clones. That had made 115 million, and this made 108, so it was very close, actually. And it was also the second sequel ever to gross over 100 million in its opening weekend. The other was only the year before Shrek 2.
Yeah.
Shrek 2 also made over 100 million in its opening weekend. Now, it's an interesting movie, this, in terms of its budget, because we talked about this. So Phantom Menace, lots of hype. Star Wars is back, and it's worth knowing all three of these movies were made on a very reasonable budget, I think, considering, of 115 million, which was a lot at the time, but I still don't think matches. I mean, the amount, like 250 million, 300 million, like some of the budgets of these movies today are like absolutely insane. 115 million, I actually think is pretty good for a movie of this nature. Even then, keep in mind we were, Pirates of the Caribbean in 2003, 2 years earlier than this, cost them 225 million. No, sorry, that one was 140 million, actually. It was the movie the next year, the Pirates of the Caribbean that came out the next year, 2006. That's the one that came at 225 million. So 1 year later, a Pirates movie with almost double the budget of this. So yeah, these were all made for about 115 million. All made for about 150 million. Phantom Menace made them 1.02 billion. We had a big drop-off for Attack of the Clones at 650 million. Where do you think Revenge of the Sith fell, budget-wise, profit-wise? Do you think it was up from Attack of the Clones or another fall?
No, I reckon it was in between the two because of the Vader boost.
So
my guess would be... Give me the figures again.
So just around a billion, so 1.02 billion and 650 million.
So I reckon around 700, 800.
Yeah. 868 million in the box office. You're exactly right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it bumps up. Really interesting to see that trend across those three films. And also, again, I'm just really impressed that he kept the budget for these three movies at about 150 million each, especially when you're looking at what was made around them. Like, that really impresses me.
Yeah, and the amount of CGI shots and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Christ, in 2007, so only 3 years after this, the other Pirates of the Caribbean movie came out. It was 300 million budget. That's insane.
It's mad.
Yeah, wow. Anyway, you got Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull cost more. 185 million.
That's nuts.
And that was 2008. So
wow.
That's something. That's really something. Anyway, that's budget stuff. Shall we do Cars Exist, Chris? So, the hot rod speeder car driven by Senator Bail Organa, Jimmy Smits, the delightful Jimmy Smits, who's great in this role and got to reprise it more recently in the Obi-Wan series. I love Jimmy Smits. Give me all the Jimmy Smits. Love that guy. Apparently, that car he drives is based on a 1948 Tucker 48, which is commonly known under the name Tucker Torpedo. It's a kind of car. Apparently, there was one parked at Skywalker Ranch which inspired it. Basically, when they filmed it, the prop that Bail Organa was using had the windshield in the rear of the car, but the front of the car wasn't there. They were going to add that in post. So when they were doing that in post, they based it on the Tucker. Although, unlike the Tucker, as you I'm sure noticed, Chris, Bail's speeder only has the Cyclops eye headlamp and not the outer two headlamps, which I'm sure you spotted almost immediately.
Oh, I turned to Jess right away and said the exact words you've just said.
Mm-hmm. Precisely, yeah. So, it's nearly taken us 3 hours to do it, but we've done Revenge of the Sith, Chris. I'm sorry there was so much trivia. I didn't realise I'd put so much across. I think I would have culled some if I'd known how much there was, but my brain clearly wasn't working today. Very sorry, everyone.
I'll forgive you, Dan.
Because we nearly did this in a reasonable amount of time. But there you go. We did it. The prequel trilogy is done. The 100th episode of Rewind Reviews is in the can. I'm very, very grateful to everyone who's listened to any episode of this podcast, and particularly if you've powered through and been with us on the journey that has been some of these like more taxing elements of this, like when we did all the Pirates movies, when we did all the Harry Potter movies, or even here doing the 3 prequel movies, which are not good. Although this time I will say we made the smarter choice of putting a bit of a gap between recordings, so we didn't quite lose our minds the way we did when we did Pirates and Harry Potter. That really did nearly kill us.
I think that made that really is a way to do like a dodgier trilogy or a dodgier series of movies for sure.
Just
like,
put some space. It did help.
Yeah.
I think I was less aggressive and angry and frustrated that I'd had to sit through the bullshit movie, and I was a lot more like, okay, this is why it doesn't work. Instead of being like, I'm annoyed that this doesn't work because I had to watch the damn thing. Real pleasure. Thank you everyone for sticking with us for all the seasons of this so far, or anyone who's watched any amount of this. We love you to bits. That leaves us with one question, Chris, because the next series, when we come back, you're the man in charge. Now we're coming back in December.
Although we should quickly say about next week.
Oh yeah. Next week we are back for us.
The anniversary celebrations, or the 100 episodes kind of celebrations, is not just limited to Revenge of the Sith, my friends.
That's true. That is so true. Next week we are doing Tale of the Tape, where I'm going to give all of the stats about the stuff we've covered. What is the average year of movie we've covered? How often was the podcast longer than the movie we were reviewing? I've got that stat. Which movies were the most financially successful? Which movies were the least financially successful? Also, our favourites and least favourites. And also, Chris and I are going to give our top 3 for the ones that aged the best, or the ones we thought held up the best, and the ones that held up the worst. So it's going to be a real fun discussion. We're going to go back over the 111-ish movies we've covered so far, and chat about some of the stats related to those. So I'm excited about that, really excited about that. So come back next week for the Tale of the Tape, or if you head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/nothingbutstatic, you can hear that right now, because we put episodes of this podcast up 1 week early on the Patreon. So for as little as $1 a month, you can have access to that episode today. But if you're listening on Spotify or any of those platforms, you can support us, of course, by doing all the liking and subscribing and commenting, and that all helps. YouTube.com/nothingbutstatic, that also helps. Or if you've got thoughts, mail@nothingbutstatic.co.uk. But that leaves us with a question, because I don't think it's right, because Tale of the Tape isn't a full review. I don't think it's correct for us to decide or to announce the next review.
Oh no, no.
On that, because people are going to potentially. It's a bonus episode. People might not listen to that one. So here we are left with the decision, because Chris, you'll be choosing the first movie of our next series, which I should clarify, I think starts 3rd of December. So we're going to do a movie each of normal movies, and then. Well, I mean, Chris could choose a Christmas movie if he wanted here, because it is technically December. I would not be happy with that. but that's Chris's prerogative. I am very much one of those people that gets annoyed that we've got Christmas decorations, on store shelves in November. Like, that really winds me up. So doing these things too early does bother me. Christmas should not be, a month and a half of the year. I really do believe that. But we've got two choices, and then we got the full on, like, it's going to be around Christmas, like the 17th and 24th, I think. We're going to do Christmas movies. But when we come back, normal movies first, theoretically, unless Chris wants to be a real dickhead, which I think I may have just talked him into doing. So, Chris, what are we doing next? What are we reviewing when we come back in December?
As always, Dan, because, we've just done a trilogy, and before that we were doing sequels.
Yeah.
And I think, as always, when we hit upon, like, a run of, like, having to choose specific things like this, the gut instinct is always to kind of the next sort of completely free choice to be some classic classic rewind reviews. So a classic movie from our childhood where there's a question of, does it hold up? How does it play on rewatch? So I have made a choice on those parameters. So we will be asking the questions: does it hold up? How does this? Is it enjoyable? Is it the movie we remembered? And we will be doing that with 1996's Jack.
Oh wow, wow! That's going to be an interesting discussion. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
everyone.
and that's because I thought about Mrs. Doubtfire, The Mask, etc., but I sort of had to be true with myself, and I was like, although it's not as big a movie, Jack is by far the more sort of interesting does it hold up question, because, I'm assuming Mrs. Doubtfire holds up, so I was like, fuck it, it's not as known, but it's very much a movie from our childhoods. Let's go with Jack.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Jack, I always remember the scene with where the lighting farts on fire. That's always the first thing that my brain conjures, because I guess child me found that funny and locked that away, and I keep that memory till you die.
I remember it being quite emotional. I remember feeling emotional watching it, like, especially, I don't want to spoil it for people that are going to watch it with us. Yeah, but there's some, there's some themes which are dark in that movie. So yeah.
I am intrigued. Let's do what we're doing, Jack. I'm excited about that. So in December, which for us right now feels like a million years away, but for listeners of this who are hearing it, because we're like 15 weeks ahead on recording, so like for us, December is like a long time away. But obviously we'll be recording it 15 weeks before that, so for us it's the same distance, if that makes sense. But yeah, for us now, December, we're in May, so December feels like a long time from now. But yeah, that's what we'll be covering when we come back. If you're into the analysing Avatar stuff, obviously that's back in between. We're doing the final season of Korra. So yeah, stick with us, subscribe, all that good stuff. But thank you all, really sincerely. I mean, 100 episodes in, with the listenership this podcast gets, we do it because we love it. Never truer words spoken. No, this is by far, I think, one of the most fun podcasts we do, and I think the handful of you that listen to this and enjoy this and are on that journey with us, we do love you, because if it was literally 0 people, I guess we really would have no excuse to be doing this and spending our time doing this. But there's just enough of you to have a fun little audience that are into it, that we keep doing it. Although I do suspect if it was 0, we'd probably still find a way to do it anyway. But that's a different issue. We have a good time doing it. So yeah, thanks everyone for sticking with us for 100 episodes. We love you dearly. We really do. I don't want to speak for Chris, but I'm going to assume he also feels that way.
Oh, absolutely. Full of gratitude for you for listening to all of them, for sure. Or listening, or even if you don't listen to all of them, even if you just pick the movies you like. I do that with plenty of podcasts where I pick, interviews with people I know. So grateful for your listening. Yeah.
Or even if literally you've just jumped in here and just checked this out, then we love you too. Absolutely. For sticking with us, particularly because this one ended up being so long. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I'm going to hand over to Chris because he ends this thing.
My name's Chris Billingham.
My name's Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.